OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, it's 7:30. It's Monday morning. Ger and Owen are with you all the way through until 10. Owen, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ger.
How is your second home, your original home? How do you consider London these days?
Yeah, the original home, I guess you could say, kind of feels
the OG home.
Unpatriotic to say such a thing.
Well, no,
that is the truth.
You're a tangled, complex individual.
I can't just shred my birth cert, can I?
Well, you could, but that could be kind of pointless.
That would be a very stupid thing to do as well.
Homer Simpson-esque.
If my passport ever, it would be Homer Simpson-esque. If my passport ever went missing, that would be a stupid thing to do.
How was it?
It was good. Great weekend. I was telling Colin before we came on air, managed to track down the hurling in a London pub. We still have this thing where people in England still aren't fully familiar with hurling, it turns out. You know, the question, the very stereotypical question of, what's this game you're watching, mate? And then the horrified face of somebody else who wasn't sure what was on the big screen still happens. I thought that was like a very 2012 meme. But in the year of our Lord 2022, people in England still don't know what hurling is.
So in an Irish pub with...
It wasn't an Irish pub, so maybe that was the issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the hurling's on?
Yeah.
And you asked for it to be on?
I rang up in advance and I was like, are you going to be showing the hurling? I'd got a recommendation.
Right.
And they were like, if nobody's watching the South Africa-Wales game, then yes. So, yeah, there wasn't really much interest in the rugby. Even though that had just started to get really good, South Africa just started to make a little bit of a comeback at the start of the second half. They were sound enough to put on the main event for us. And
how was it? What was that viewing experience like?
Like, I mean, it depends on your point of view. Like, in the back of my head, I was just thinking back to our quick picks on Friday morning where all five of us went for Clare as Kilkenny took that prediction and absolutely eviscerated it with their kind of horrifying display of being Kilkenny once again. That's probably what my experience was.
Yeah, okay.
But you seem to have lost your train of thought completely there. What's going on?
No, nothing. I'm just interested in what your takeaways from London were after all this time.
My takeaways from London was that it was a very enjoyable experience, yeah. That's really it, you know, after all this time. After what's it been, maybe 2 months since I've been back over there, it's still the same place, still tipping along nicely.
Yeah, okay. The JP McManus Pro-Am is on today and tomorrow. The big breaking news over the last 24 hours is that all the headline writers got to use the words Groundhog Day, because if Limerick had been beaten, they wouldn't have been able to use it, right? Because that would have been technically, you know, very rare and therefore not Groundhog Day.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. Like, this will be the sort of context to Limerick's greatest ever All-Ireland yesterday, and I'm not sure if it's a situation where Galway will be overly happy to have played a part in all of that, but it definitely feels that the last couple of years, whether it was just COVID, whether it was just the fact that there was nobody there to watch them kind of saunter to 2 All-Irelands in really impressive form, has that kind of like given Limerick a bit of a kick this year, where this was always going to be the most important All-Ireland of their 4 and 5 years, doing it in normal times once again. And not only that, it feels like they're going to have to do an All-Ireland in pretty challenging circumstances in ways that they didn't have to find last year or the year before. And I think they're going to have to try and find that again in the final, because I think we slept on Kilkenny a little bit, to say the least. I didn't see that level of performance coming. It's not obviously, I think they were 1 point favourites to win on Saturday. I don't think too many people were predicting a Kilkenny win, and certainly I didn't see anybody predicting a Kilkenny, just a washout in favour of Kilkenny. So I think that points towards a final that Limerick are going to be under serious pressure again, but they will rightly be favourites for. So it's going to be, if they end up with Liam McCarthy again this year, I think this will probably be the sweetest of them all, the best of them all for the Limerick fans and for the players.
Yeah, the fact that it's going to be Kilkenny in the final is going to help with that. Right, here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. Our performance rankings in just a moment. Alan Quinlan live in glorious Technicolor from Down Under at 8:10. Sports pages with Carl, and Gregor Paul is going to join us for more rugby at 8:50. Kieran Carey is going to join us at 9:10 to look back on the hurling, and more hurling from Tommy Walsh as well. But at 7:35, let's get into the performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Yes, indeed, it is the Gillette performance rankings, and every week we go through the bad, the good, the grand, and we are brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. And every week we give you the chance to win a Gillette Labs shaving kit. To be with a chance of winning that, you can just let us know who you think should make the performance rankings, and the best place to enter is on the Off the Ball Instagram page. You can see the comments box in our story for suggestions. We got loads of suggestions in over the last few days, and I guess the best place to start in the red, as you can see there, is Irish rugby after the performance on Saturday, which doesn't feel overly surprising or shocking or any sort of OTT word you want to use in relation to it. It kind of feels that this was about the level that we expected. It wasn't as bad as the scoreline suggested, I would say. Like, I wouldn't get overly carried away with it. Ireland could have been closer. The All Blacks weren't very good. They were good. They were much better than Ireland, but they can hit another level, which is kind of terrifying ahead of Dunedin this weekend. And I think all in all, if you take this on in isolation in a stadium where the All Blacks haven't lost in 28 years, worse things could have happened. And I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's even grand. It was bad, and it still could have been a lot worse, which probably tells you all you need to know about where Ireland are at the moment and the expectations going into next year, where they will need to undo a big team, one of the top 2 teams in the world, top 3 teams in the world, in order to break that glass ceiling. The evidence of the last week is that that glass ceiling ain't going to be shattered next year.
Isn't it good of the All Blacks to just remind us that the once every 4 years going out at a World Cup quarter-final or before it is coming our way, almost irrespective of what we do at this point. So what's the point in hoping? Abandon hope, all ye who enter here. Isn't that what happened? You're like, it wasn't that bad. Really? Was it not that bad? We had like loads of possession, loads of territory.
Yeah.
And, the scoreline was not close in the end.
Yeah.
And there was nothing we could do to interrupt the pattern.
Like, the thing is, though, the possession and territory in a different day would have narrowed the scoreline a little bit more.
Yeah, a little bit more. But, like, to the point where we're going to win the game?
No, I didn't say that. I just think that it just would have, like, reflected... like, the scoreline, when you looked at it, like, looks like a hammering. And
it was a hammering, though. They scored 28 points in about 3 minutes, and we couldn't stop them.
No, okay, so it was a hammering. But there's different levels of hammerings here. There's a 60-0. That was literally Ireland. It was literally Ireland's last game.
Yeah, but we had a man sent off after 5 minutes, so that's not a real score. We never get beaten 60-0. That's why that happened once.
I know, but Ireland have got players sent off and not lost game 60-0.
Never against the All Blacks, right? I mean, and also not after 5 or 6 minutes the way that one was in the last test. I think the 60-0 is a bad example, right? That was a fairly stereotypical.
Okay, well, yeah.
that was actually fairly stereotypical. Plucky Ireland, we go out, we do well for 15 minutes, and then we get absolutely destroyed. And then afterwards, we're like, oh, we're not that far away. But actually, the truth is, we're miles away. Where's everybody talking about our world-class front row right now? Where's all that nonsense that we puffed up ourselves with? Oh, look, we've got this great, everything in Irish rugby is perfect. It works perfectly. The kids come through the school system, they play for Leinster, they play for Ireland. It's the same style, it's the same system. Apparently, New Zealand looked at that and went, just do this and this and this. Oh, thanks, La Rochelle, and thanks, Bulls. That's a good point. We'll do that too. And then they didn't even have to try that hard.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Nobody's saying that Ireland are on the same level as the All Blacks. My point is just that there are different degrees of hammerings, and this wasn't the worst hammering that Ireland could have taken on Saturday.
Do you feel like perhaps you're, going a bit easy on them for this? Like, is that not? That's our best team. That's our best team. Like,
but I think it's not going easy on them. It's like actually an acceptance of where this team is actually at, or what Irish rugby can achieve over the next little while. Because
a quarter-final in the World Cup.
Yeah.
Our destiny is to be the same as ever it was.
Like, have you seen anything over the last little while that would suggest that would change? Like, did you come away from the Six Nations this year thinking next year's the year? Because we've been in better positions after other Six Nations going into a World Cup year.
I hope that having put it up to France in that game, and I hope that having just beaten the All Blacks in November, we would have kicked on from that. But we didn't kick on from that. It appears as if that was a peak.
Yeah.
Isn't that the point?
I guess so. The counterpoint to that was that some of the players, and I'm saying some of them, not all of them, some of the players were exciting, and they still are exciting. And I'm talking about the young hookers in particular that kind of we pinned our hopes on for a period of time, saying
Sheahan
there's
looks like
two
a superhero.
players. And when Kelleher comes back, there's two players you can pin your hat on there, and that was maybe informing it a little bit. There was in fairness, we haven't seen them enough, but there was like a tranche of Ulster players coming through, and the backs especially, which hopefully we'll see over the next few years that we're giving hope. And that's kind of what you want. You look at a team in the present and hope that they can get better over the next little while.
Yeah, but unfortunately the next little while isn't really the next little while. It's like the next 6 games, and that's it to get to the World Cup. Like, maybe it's not this World Cup, it's the World Cup after. We've got a 5-year plan in place here, and actually it's World Cup 2020, blah, 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 blah. Whatever the next one is. Where is that one going to be? Do we know?
I have no idea.
It's the American and Canada one?
Oh, that one's confirmed, yeah. That is true. So, like, what were you expecting on Saturday morning?
I was expecting us to be able to, under whatever the circumstances, if all is going well, I was expecting us to be able to drag New Zealand into a dogfight and keep the score close. I was expecting our defensive structure to hold up. I was expecting our set piece to work. I was expecting our tackles not to be missed. I was expecting us not to knock the ball on as much as we did. Yeah,
now those are things that you can kind of point to. I think it's, I don't know. I think that there's a gulf between these two teams, isn't there?
But there shouldn't be, really. Like, why is there? We just beat them relatively well when they were here the last time, and so even if there is a gulf between them, we have enough rugby experience and knowledge and nous to be able to drag a team into something that they don't want, as opposed to doing what we did, which now. I'm doing the glass half empty reading of this, because there's a lot of glass half full. We just got annihilated and everybody's like, oh, this is grand. It's a bit like the meme of the dog in the fire.
Yeah, do you know, is anybody saying it's grand? Like, it's,
yeah, everybody's actually saying
it could have been worse is not the same as saying it's grand.
I see and hear a lot of people talking about the positives from it, and a lot of people getting great experience, and certainly the upbeat message from the captain and the coach afterwards was the refereeing was a bit off, and like, I think it definitely was, and maybe the refereeing transforms the game. Maybe there is a possibility that you start pinging them in the rucks and we have more time in the ball, and all of a sudden we can do what we did to them, and that it's as simple as that. I don't know. There's a possibility that's the case. I doubt it, and I certainly am not hanging my hat on it, but there's been a wellspring of positivity about the experience and what we're learning, and it's like, nah, I don't know. I just feel uncomfortable with that. Like,
it's an interesting kind of question of perspective on it all. Like, there's definitely a part of me that's thinking to myself, you know what, find out how you react to the toughest possible situation. Find out how you react when Michael Bent is literally getting called up to training in that situation, in the toughest place in the world to go for a summer tour. Add those extra Maori games, put yourself under severe pressure over the course of it. Part of me definitely thinks that is a good way to go, because what's the point on finding out that you're incapable of sustaining that ridiculous level of pressure, incapable of sustaining it at the end of next year? Why not just find it out now? Why not just add this into the Irish schedule every second year and make these tests as tough as possible, so that you don't just get humbled every 4 years, you actually get humbled every second year. And maybe every so often, because you're getting these every second year rather than every fourth year, you win one of these tests or you win one of these series that are exceptionally tough. Granted, you're not going to have the All Blacks all the time. They went and they won in Australia. They went and they won a test in South Africa in what was it, 16? Like,
and they won a tour in Argentina. So they've done all that, you know. Like, that's the thing, is that, like, there's nothing new here really under the sun, except that this one has come around in this World Cup cycle. Let's get to the comments, right? Fergus Keogh, Red's a bit harsh for the rugby. 17 really bad minutes, but otherwise fairly decent, all things considered. I haven't heard anybody say it was like, okay, yeah. Andy Jennings, hope is all we have, Ger. Ireland were over the line 3 times and denied tries by great defence. The All Blacks team are beatable. We get special points for not scoring the try over the line, do we? Is that what happens? There's like a little asterisk, goes, but we scored 3 tries that weren't given. Like, Kenny the dad says, I don't think we were hammered. Silly interception try and ball handling at the New Zealand line on 3 occasions cost us dearly. They were more clinical. Severisa's try counts. They put the point on the board, and they're 7 points. That's what happens when an intercept try happens. If we had scored an intercept try, everybody would be like, oh, look at that. That's quality defending with the pressure we put them under.
But that's not what the commentator is saying. Like,
they are. They're saying that this is grand. The fire is raging at the door, and the dog is smiling off into the distance going, this is grand.
I actually... So okay, let me think. So Ireland were going to lose that test anyway on Saturday. It's about looking at it in kind of like a wider sense of what can they take from that test, or what is it
Why
telling
do we
us?
accept that, though?
No, I'm not saying it's about accepting it. I'm saying that say if you're taking into account Ireland getting over the line, not dotting the ball down, and that basic breakdown in skills, do we then have like this? Do we then look at that moment and say we need to have a wider conversation around schools rugby and
we've been
grassroots
having that.
rugby
We've been
and
having
this
that. And do you know what?
throughput of talent, or is actually that's something that suggests to us that this scoreline could have been closer at the weekend?
What we do is we have that conversation in the aftermath of the World Cup every 4 years, and then a little bit of green shoots comes through. There's a successful underage team. Everybody's like, oh, everything's going grand. And then we get to the World Cup quarter-final and we get beaten again.
So you need to have more of those experiences, and that conversation needs to be happening more and more. But like I don't know. I think that those commentators are kind of onto something with regards to that. And like that saying that New Zealand, the commentators saying New Zealand weren't even great there. Like that's kind of what I think, and that's kind of more of a worrying sign as well. If you want to kind of feed into your glass half empty argument, is that New Zealand could easily just go up another notch the next day. And look, I'm not going to bring it up again, but the 60-0, let's not forget, it was actually at the end of the tour. The last time Ireland went on tour to New Zealand, we got evidence that they actually get better as the tour goes on, or maybe Ireland get ground down as the tour goes on. So maybe this will get worse, and maybe your very half-empty glass will be particularly empty, and it won't even be half full next Monday after next weekend. There is every chance that happens.
I just think that there's a willingness to make excuses for the rugby team when they fail, right? And what they need to do is stop making those excuses. And I'm sure the coaching ticket in private are not making excuses, but it did feel like afterwards there's been a lot of happy clappy, they're tired, whatever, this is inevitable, sure, they're New Zealand, what can we do but keep the ball poked out to them? Do you know, like, this is supposed to be us, one of the first world nations, going down to show with our very best team. We picked the very best players available to us, who may or may not be available around a World Cup, but that's the level that you're going to have of a team representing us in the big games in the World Cup, because you can't legislate for anything other than having a bunch of your players injured at any one time. And we got spanked. We got absolutely spanked in that game. You know, but for this and that, and there was a few things, and maybe the referee, fair enough. But the truth is, we got absolutely spanked, and we need to be honest about that before we can fix it, I think.
Yeah, it just sounds like you're surprised about what happened on Saturday.
Well, you know, what, are you not? You predicted the 30-point hammering.
I don't think after the Maori game last week that many people were predicting Ireland were going to put up.
But the Maori game again were two entirely different teams.
No, I get that. But it was still the sort of mood music that comes into a test like this, and also it is kind of like your situation of like where's your depth at compared to where is New Zealand depth at, and that will always feed into the top tier eventually.
Ger Eoin says they still are the best team in the world. Playing down there is the hardest tour. This is where we learn about our players. Easy to pick where we were poor, but can we grow and improve? Go back and look at Earl's try in the first half. Really good play with fantastic skills. Pity they couldn't repeat that. And Daniel Casey says ref was definitely off, but didn't have an impact on the result of the game. I think although the ruck was an issue, New Zealand punished our mistakes, ruthless as always. So we'll see. I expect a response from the team next week. I expect them to be able to dig in, and when the second try goes in a minute, they'll be like, start a scrap, somebody go down injured, you know, whatever it is you're supposed to do to interrupt the flow of the game. At that point, I would do that, and I would expect them to have some little tricks for that.
Jaco Piper's up on Saturday as well.
Yeah, I did not know that. I expect South Africa. I expect South Africa and New Zealand to both be the winners next weekend.
Our next team in red is Clare. We have only limited room to touch on every team here, so this is a conversation as much about Kilkenny being in the green as it is about Clare being in the red, because it's hard to know which was most surprising. Like, you talk about trying to interrupt momentum there in the context of the Irish rugby team on Saturday. Could Clare have done something more in the first half to try and interrupt the momentum that was clearly going against them, like a complete breakdown on Saturday? Maybe they could have. Like, it did feel that, like, maybe that's at the end of the game that they had against Wexford in the All-Ireland quarter-final, that Wexford lost a few key components of their defence, and maybe that is the true reason why Clare actually got over that All-Ireland quarter-final. Yes, O'Donnell and Kelly really turned it on in the last quarter of that game, but was the reason why that happened was because Wexford lost a couple of key components of that defence. That might potentially be the truth now when we look at what that Kilkenny defence did to that Clare attack and just completely nullifying them. and allowing Kilkenny to completely run riot over the course of the entire game. So Mikey Butler, Hugh Lawler, Paddy Deegan, they're the guys getting the credit, and rightly so, in that Kilkenny defence, and they just completely locked up Kelly and Co. And once you lock up Tony Kelly, chances are you've got to go some way to stopping Clare. What was it, 27, 28 games consecutively and that Tony Kelly has scored from playing. That run came to an end at the weekend as a result of Mikey Butler's performance. On the flip side of that then was Clare not being able to shut down Kilkenny's attack whatsoever. TJ, Owen Cody and your boy Adrian Mullen, who you've been talking up for the last few years, kind of had, certainly when it came to Cody and Mullen, probably their finest day so far, certainly in recent memory. So I think the 4 weeks that they had off was absolutely perfect for a team that likes to prepare immaculately for an opponent. I would suggest that Brian Cody has a blueprint. It might not be the blueprint, but he has a blueprint to stop Limerick in a couple of weeks. And I'd be surprised if it was anything but another classic between these two teams. Limerick, though, will be angry after what happened in 2019. I think John Kiley said yesterday that 3 years is a long time. It doesn't come into play whatsoever. Is 3 years long enough for Brian Cody to have forgotten what happened in the 2019 final, though, and Richie Hogan's red card and all that? I'm not so sure. I think that actually, in hindsight, 2019 may actually be something that motivates Kilkenny as much as Limerick. So that's going to be fascinating. But Clare were really bad on Saturday, really, really disappointing. And maybe it's the Croke Park factor. It doesn't sum up everything. There's a whole pile of other reasons to explain that performance, and maybe some that don't even explain that performance. But I would say that they were a little bit like deer in the headlights, hitting the big house and underperforming.
It doesn't make any sense. Andy Jennings says Clare were utter tripe, the biggest disappointment of 2022. It's certainly a massive letdown for them and for everybody associated with them, because they were so brilliant so far, so vibrant, so like I don't know, when the wides were racking up from plays that they had been scoring from all year, the massive raking points from inside their own half or the halfway line that had been tearing other teams apart, when they started drifting wide, that was just the end of it. Like the air came out of the balloon so quickly with that. And there was a bit of that in Galway, but Galway kept at it. Like the Galway wides really killed them as well in the end. I know the refereeing decisions definitely did not go their way in that second half, and they can feel a little bit hard done by about that, but at the same time it's the wides that will kill them over the winter when they look back at the video. And there's no explanation for what happened to Clare, really. Like, I see was it Dalo was saying that the Munster final took so much out of them, but again, I don't know, they seem to have recovered from that, and they seem to have had a bit of time since then. Maybe they're just not used to playing at this stage of the season, those games I don't know. You're grasping and groping for some kind of explanation, but it doesn't make any sense.
No, I think that if Clare had won on Saturday, we would have been saying that the 4 week layoff for Kilkenny had them stale, and the tune-up that Clare had against Wexford and the extra time against Limerick had them perfectly primed for that game. I think Paddy Andrews often says it on the football pod, this idea of being undercooked or overcooked or whatever it is, just is a complete excuse. And the Dubs had to try and get themselves to a pitch every year after the Leinster Football Championship. Granted, Clare were coming at it from another perspective, and the Wexford game was a tough one for sure, but I don't think it comes anywhere close to explaining what happened. It is a reason for sure, but it's not anywhere near the reason, and they'll struggle to find a silver bullet. The only thing is that they're probably in danger a little bit of throwing the baby out with the bathwater this winter, and I hope it doesn't happen, because it does feel that this has been a bit of an arrival season for Clare. The problem for them is that they're in the Munster Championship next year. Yeah. They could easily be grand and finish fourth, and their season could be done. They could have a Waterford-esque season where they go after the league even more so than they did this year, win that silverware and get dumped out of Munster. So
don't go after the league is the lesson we've all learned. That is the lesson.
Right? The thing is, so I think this year was a great opportunity for them. Kilkenny just have us bemused quite often, and they have done down through the years, about how they are the Death Star that just can never be destroyed. And
Cody and Mullen are both young hurlers of the year, and they're both coming to full maturity at this stage. Mullen's back from his injury, had faced some internal criticism. That was one of the stories that we've been talking about over the last month and a half or so, and was finding form and found it. And Cody's devastating. There's they can, and Tommy Walsh was making the point and has been making the point all along. He feels like the players as individuals are there. It's whether or not they can reach that maturity of style that they need, and they looked to be able to do it yesterday. And again, TJ Reid went off and got married and came back and was a bit slow getting back to the levels of TJ Reid, and now has slowly played his way back to the levels of TJ Reid. It's like, well, this is interesting. It is interesting. You'd still make Limerick strong favourites on the basis of what they were able to do yesterday. When they needed it, they went to the bench, and actually the bench didn't make that much of an impact, really. It was the players who were on the field. It was like the dominance of Kyle Hayes for 15 minutes at the end of the game yesterday. So, Kyle Hayes, not a great season. Man of the match, All-Ireland semi-final, centre forward. Thanks very much. Not a defender, not a full forward line. I'm centre forward. Put me main stage.
Yeah, that was like another kind of terrifying aspect of Limerick yesterday. Like, it's just, Kilkenny are just the great unknown sometimes, because even allowing for Clare's wides and the breakdown in their attack, there was still just a whole host of mini battles happening across the pitch where it was just man on man who could get to the ball first, and Kilkenny won, it seemed anyway, to the eye test, that they were winning the vast majority of those battles. And it's trying to describe that, or trying to put into words how that happens, and that's the kind of the beautiful and tangible about this team, and has been about Brian Cody teams down through the years.
He talks about literally the Oisin was interviewing him, and it was like, oh, what did you like most? Honesty of effort, genuineness, hard work, hooking, blocking, tackling. It's like, yeah, but they were also allied to that. They were able to ping the ball to each other and find space and create opportunities. And it's like, okay, all right. So they're like the Terminator. They've mutated into something completely different now. And it's like, ooh, that's interesting. So if he pulls this off,
it's the best he's ever pulled off.
It is like far and away the best he would ever have pulled off, because this is a rival in Limerick who are actually rivaling his great Kilkenny team to be one of the great teams of all time. So much is on the line. It's going to be 2 great weeks of build up to that. Limerick 3-point favourites as it stands at the moment. So we'll come back to
that. Next up in the amber is Cristiano Ronaldo. I would have Manchester United actually maybe in the amber as opposed to Ronaldo. The problem for Manchester United, or the opportunity for Manchester United potentially, is a Cristiano Ronaldo shaped one, who wants to leave the club in order to play Champions League football. He's played in the Champions League obviously for 19 consecutive seasons. He scored 140 goals in the competition. He probably wants to add a few more goals to that tally, so he wants to play Champions League football next season. Manchester United don't really have another striker to step up. His 18 goals last season, I guess, put a bit of a gloss statistically on the year, but some could very reasonably make the argument that actually he held them back last season. So there has been some reports over the last little while that Todd Bowley has had talks with George Mendes. The idea of him moving to Stamford Bridge has been floated, but Manchester United believe not to be entertaining this whatsoever, and they're firmly saying that they want to keep the player. But you just wonder, is there a situation here where Ten Hag could turn this into something of a positive, like a Ronaldo who doesn't want to be at the club? Is that what Ten Hag needs in his first season?
Get him out. This is an opportunity. What do you like? Man United, they're in the amber because they're primed to go. This is like a big moment for them. Get him out. Drive him to the airport and say thanks very much. Get a helicopter to land on the pitch. Wave him off. Say thanks very much, Ronaldo. That was great. We stopped you from being in the Man City jersey. That was brilliant. Imagine if he'd gone to Man City and stunk the joint out there. Like, Get Ronaldo out. This is a big opportunity to hit the reset button properly, and then you take his salary off. You take all the issues and all the stuff that's going on, and you say, right, this is entirely 100% the responsibility of the players who are here now. Let's see you all step up. Marcus Rashford again in the papers talking about, it's great. There's a new voice, new tactical direction. Things have changed. Like, why are you talking? But get Ronaldo out, start again. If there's any money coming in for it, I mean, that's very unlikely, right? That you did not expect to get any money back for Ronaldo, considering you signed him on a 2-year deal. But either way, they have to take this opportunity to get rid of Cristiano now. He is not a useful, functioning part of a team who is going to win a league, and they're trying to build a league-winning team, and they need to start thinking medium term as opposed to the constant short term. Let's have the dessert that's on the table, and let's have another dessert, and let's have another dessert, and let's have another dessert. I feel sick. Why do I feel sick? Because I've gorged myself on short term thinking.
Like, the frustrating thing for Manchester United here is that they failed to qualify for the Champions League 2 months ago. Like, Cristiano Ronaldo's rationale for wanting to leave the club should have been obvious in April, really, and they didn't even need to get to the end of the season before this came to light. So Ten Hag at least seems like a fairly meticulous planner. I would suggest that his plans included Cristiano Ronaldo. Does that not involve a phone call to Ronaldo? Does that not involve a conversation where you try and war game every single scenario here which involves Ronaldo leaving? Because like, this isn't a bolt from the blue, Cristiano Ronaldo leaving Manchester United this summer. You would like to think that the Manchester United as a club would have sussed out if Ronaldo was happy to stay for next season last month. Whereas now, I know it's only July, but like, pre-season has begun, in case people haven't been paying attention. It's not a very active pre-season with a lot of good players playing yet or anything like that, but it has begun. Teams are about to go on tour. Is this just going to be another one of these summers where Manchester United leave everything late again?
I think a couple of things, right? It doesn't really matter if they leave everything late this year, because Ten Hag is a long-term thing, and so I don't think we should be judging Ten Hag until the end of the season, and even kind of the start of the next season, when there's like that third transfer window that he had will be shut. So it doesn't really matter to me if this happens late. And the other thing I think is that it's possible that somebody has decided that they're interested in him, and now all of a sudden that's why this move is happening. So you're kind of,
it's Mendes potentially working away in the background.
yeah, or maybe it is the interest from Chelsea and the fact that Bayern Munich might want or need somebody. I don't know. Either way, the opportunity to get rid of him and not be stuck with him for this year, and constantly having to play through him and having all the drama. Oh, he didn't shake the hands, or he didn't go and clap the fans. He had a row. Somebody else took the penalty. Like, get rid of all that. Get rid of all of that. And if anybody else creates any drama this year, get rid of them. You've got rid of Pogba. You've got rid of Lingard. There's a few other players there who you could do with, like, just gently easing out. So Ronaldo is clearly one of those players who, sells loads of shirts and creates loads of social media buzz. But if Ten Hag is going to take over, and we keep hearing about, he's on the training ground and he's telling them all what to do, it's like, okay, it's kind of what a manager's supposed to. Or a good coach. Maybe there hasn't been anybody coaching that team properly for the last number of years. Get Ronaldo out. Now's the opportunity. Get him gone. Get rid of that. And if it is late and if it's a pain in the ass to try and replace him or get some bodies in, doesn't matter. Just get rid of him and then start again.
You would have to say, though, that if the decision happens late this summer, they might not be able to find a suitable replacement. And is that Manchester United squad good enough to finish top four?
I mean, I don't think they're finishing top four this season.
Regardless, even if they sign top-class striker.
I don't know. I don't know what their best bet is.
It's hard to make that case, to be fair. Even at this current state of play, if Ten Hag even has a successful season, like Spurs and Chelsea, the positions they're in going into next season seem pretty strong. And even for Arsenal recruiting very well at the moment, it's hard to make a case for them to be top four as well. So maybe not. Maybe it's just an acceptance that the build has to happen, and that's exactly how it has to go. But maybe building without Ronaldo is exactly what you want to do in season one, and it just opens the opportunity for somebody else. In the green, we'll get to Wimbledon with Cullen in just a moment, but before that we should talk about Limerick. You kind of touched on them a little bit already, just with regards to some of their performances yesterday. Kyle Hayes just coming back to form in pretty spectacular fashion, got man of the match. Like, I think what's potentially even more terrifying is who didn't play well. Obviously Keane Lynch barely features. Gerard Hegarty doesn't have one of his great days, even though he's been one of their stars over the last couple of years, and they still managed to eke out the win when it matters most. It feels to me sometimes as if like it's been the Lynch and Hegarty show over the last little while, that they've been the two most important components of that attack. And even somebody as extraordinarily talented as Aaron Gillan sometimes just goes under the radar a little bit. They sometimes just don't need him. They just find themselves in open space 60 yards out from goal, and they're like, well, we don't need you inside. But sometimes when it's really, really important, when the games are in the melting pot, they need Aaron Gillan inside. They need their corner forward. And whenever they need him, he comes up trumps. And he was sensational yesterday as well. It was the Gillan and Hayes show. And they have options everywhere, like 1 to 15. It's an absolutely outstanding team. And to beat them, you need to be close to perfect. Galway were not anywhere close to perfect yesterday when you look at the wides count. However, you look at, say, the Brian Concannon goal, the pass inside to him was just weighted perfectly. And if you can do that against Limerick, if you can go long and get your distribution perfect, which I accept is a big ask, you might be able to cause some problems.
But you'd say that Galway at best broke even with that long ball to the full back line, because there was countless times, particularly in the last 5 or 6 minutes, where the ball would go up, it would be one-on-one, and the Limerick defender comes out with the ball in his hand passes it off, or looks up and finds somebody does the crocodile eyes and goes, yeah, I can see stuff. I don't know. They're at such a high level, and yet, Galway are right there. You know, it's level going into stoppage time. And Galway, I think we're going to have a lot of regrets about the Ys that they hit in stoppage time as well. So, anyway, we'll talk more about Limerick. We've plenty of time for that.
Yeah, and Wimbledon is last up. Colm, how are you?
Owen and Ger, good
Why is
morning.
this in the green?
In the green, Saturday night drama. Nick Kyrgios versus Stefanos Tsitsipas. It's our yearly, or annual, I should say, Kyrgios loving or hating, wherever you stand on it. But he provided the drama once again with an unbelievable display against Tsitsipas. An unbelievable display of both tennis and shithousery at the highest level. But Tsitsipas actually got fined more than Kyrgios. So usually we have Kyrgios is doing all the bad behaviour, and the other player is usually pretty quiet, goes about their business, doesn't want to get involved in it. But Tsitsipas is rising to the occasion and, kind of like just hit kind of a backhand frustrated shot into the crowd at the end of the second set when he lost the second set, Tsitsipas, and it just missed a fan. And if had it hit a fan, he would have been DQ'd.
Yeah, so disqualified for anybody who's not down with the patois of tennis. At that point, there is a conflagration. Like, there is an absolute... Kyrgios is screaming at the umpire going, that's a disqualification. He needs to get... You can't hit the ball into the crowd without it being a disqualification. And then the umpire is actually having a back and forth with him, which is, it's difficult. There needs to be some way to speak in a sensible way to somebody who is being a brat and at the same time not engage too much. Because once you start engaging, he's like, well, what about Djokovic? It's like, good point. Your man in the crowd, it's possible the ball bounced back and hit him in the back of the head.
No, it didn't hit anybody, definitely.
Sure.
Definitely, yeah, 100%.
You don't see, you see it go in between.
Yeah, but there was a person sitting there. That person got up. So had the person been sitting there, it would have hit that person there.
Well, that's pretty lucky.
What I found was when the TV coverage showed that the first thing after that second set ended was Kyrgios walking back to his chair. Then it cuts out and then it goes back to Kyrgios complaining to the umpire something about Tsitsipas, he needs to be disqualified. And my thinking was, Kyrgios just isn't up for this match because it's one set all, and that was really hard to win that second set. And towards the end of that second set, Kyrgios did one of his things where he kind of starts to give up because Tsitsipas won the first set. And I think he had one service game where he was serving so fast that the ball boys weren't back in place in time, and Tsitsipas wasn't ready, and he wasn't bouncing the ball in times. He was just picking it up and serving and then looking at his box being like, what do you want me to do? I'm playing terribly, why aren't you helping me? And he doesn't have a coach, he's never had a coach, so he just has his entourage up there and he basically vents to them.
Or is he talking to himself?
Well, he's talking to his box, but it's about himself.
He's screaming abuse at somebody. Is he
there was a point.
Himself or the box?
Well, there was a point where he was 2-1 up, and the commentators were saying, he's in dreamland here. He should be happy out with life, and he was venting every time they went to sit down. Venting towards his box, saying something, couldn't really make it out, but it was clearly to himself, giving out to himself. So when I thought,
because if there's somebody in the box taking that, they need to get down there and smack around the chops.
Well, when I saw him complaining to the umpire, I thought he doesn't want to play, and then I saw what Tsitsipas did. But it was actually better after that when Kyrgios tried one of his underarm serves, and Tsitsipas smashed the ball back at him, and it hit the scoreboard. And had that hit the crowd, then people, maybe not. But they would have got away with it because it's in play, and all he would have had to say was, I just hit a terrible shot.
You're allowed to do that.
Afterwards, Tsitsipas said, I was aiming for Kyrgios.
Yeah, well, he hit him twice.
Hit him twice.
Yeah,
and that was the only time in the whole match where Kyrgios is quiet, because he just let Tsitsipas have his tantrum because he knew he was going to get the better of him. And afterwards, Tsitsipas, and they're formerly friends, like former double partners, these two. Tsitsipas called him a bully.
I'm tight with his brother, says
Yeah, tight with his brothers, yeah. But I don't know, yeah, I mean, that was kind of a little bit of a dig. Well, we used to be tight, but I'm actually tighter with your brothers now. But they played doubles together in the past. There's loads of comments, Kyrgios, speaking very nicely about Tsitsipas, or Kyrgios, but very nicely about Tsitsipas. But afterwards, Tsitsipas calls him a bully.
And evil.
An evil side to him. And he also, to balance that, he said there's a good side to him too, but there's an evil side. And Kyrgios said, he needs to toughen up, he's soft. I play basketball all the time, and it's dog eat dog. And these tennis players, they're not so bad to play against. You need to toughen up.
I mean, Tsitsipas is, we don't know what he was saying, I guess, but I mean, getting trash talked in professional sport, I mean, is that not just the nature of the beast?
Yeah, I mean, it is. It is to an extent. I understood Tsitsipas's point because Kyrgios does tend to get his way in these things.
He does.
Yeah, I mean, he does. Like, he gets fined. Like, he got fined for his verbals to the umpire. He got fined $4,000, and Tsitsipas got $10,000 for the ball into the crowd. But he does tend to get his way.
Should have been disqualified.
I don't know how he wasn't.
I think
I can't believe the difference. You have to actually hit someone. That's the rule?
Yeah, well, or hurt them then, and so that debate actually happens. Oh, if Djokovic if he'd hurt someone more, I couldn't follow the line of argument. Basically, Kyrgios was ranting and was making points to the umpire that this should happen, and it felt like he was right, and it felt like if Kyrgios had hit a ball into the crowd and had missed everybody, they would have been like, "Oh, sorry, mate, we're really sorry to see you go, but off you go."
He should have gone. I was delighted that he didn't, because I wanted to see the match go on. But I mean, like, he was right. Djokovic went as well. But the tennis itself was actually brilliant. In the last 3 points of the match, Kyrgios saved a set point in that fourth set tiebreak with a delicious little subtle dink over the net, which was, like 9 times out of 10 you miss those. And then the next 2 points, brilliant winners.
It has been excellent over the last few days.
Yeah, over the weekend.
The Sinner Alcaraz stuff last night.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I mean, they're the future. 20 and 21. 2019 actually. Yeah, I mean, that's what we have to look forward to. We've talked about before, you have like Medvedev, Zverev, Thiem, Tsitsipas are all brilliant, but not quite like absolutely elite, whereas Alcaraz and Sinner are showing really good signs of being
I'd
next
never
level
heard of Sinner before this.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Italian guy, he's been thereabouts. He had never done anything on grass before this tournament. Never won a major grass match, but he's made serious strides here and like totally outplayed Alcaraz, to which Alcaraz admitted afterwards. Actually posted on Instagram saying he was by far the better player. Looking forward to have many more battles in the future. We talked about Alcaraz a few months ago, that everyone was calling him the best player in the world in current form, and since then, he got knocked out of the French Open earlier than expected. Kind of did okay here at Wimbledon. Doesn't have any experience in grass really, but the future's bright for those two. And for tennis as well, like we had Roger Federer come on court yesterday. It was great to see him in his suit. Sad to see him not playing. But like we do eventually need to move on from these three. But while they're here, we want to cherish them.
That's happening though. What side of the draw is everybody on?
So Djokovic can play Nadal.
Right.
1 against 2. They're seeded 1 and 2 because Medvedev's world number 1. He obviously can't play, his band, and Zverev is injured, and he was world number 2. So they moved up to 1 and 2. And from the Kyrgios perspective, he can play Nadal in the semi-final and has a really, really good chance of getting there. I mean, it would be total self-destruction by him if he does not get
American.
Yeah, Nakashima, 20-year-old.
Okay.
No real experience in the game of note, like very talented player, but Kyrgios should beat him all day long. And then he'll probably play Alex de Minaur in the quarterfinals, his fellow Aussie, who he has a winning record against. Like, he should definitely beat him, and that would be Nadal in the semi-finals. And of course, he's beaten Nadal before in the 2014 fourth round to get to the quarterfinal of Wimbledon.
Right.
So grass is by far his best service. Like, Kyrgios is going to go missing again for another 6 months after this. So we want to cherish him while we have him. And then he could play Djokovic in the final, which is the most long overdue match in sport. Djokovic against Kyrgios.
Djokovic has to, so he's got Sinner on his side then.
Yeah, he's got Sinner. Yeah, so like
but nobody else.
The big threat that Djokovic has not had to deal with is Matteo Berrettini, who got to the final last year, who Djokovic beat in 4 sets. Berrettini pulled out in day 2 of the tournament with COVID without striking a ball, and he had won Queens before that, retained Queens actually.
Okay.
So that that was his biggest threat, I would say. I mean, Djokovic should easily win this because Nadal, hasn't won Wimbledon in 12 years.
And very quickly, Swiatek.
Yeah, she's gone.
Out.
Yeah, she's gone. Got really easily beaten by Elise Cornet. It was bound to happen. She's not that comfortable on grass. She's just playing on momentum alone. But to win 37 matches in a row, which incorporates 6 tournaments, is incredible. That's the record for the 21st century. Beat Venus Williams' record from 2000. But it was just one match too many. Right. Cornet easily beat her.
All right. 13 minutes past 8. That is this week's Gillette Labs Performance Rankings.
OTB AM's Performance Rankings with Gillette.
Right, we are brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Now, we're also delighted to announce that Braeburn Coffee is now the official coffee partner to OTB. Each week we're giving one lucky viewer a €100 voucher to spend on some Braeburn coffee goodness at an Apple Green store near you. You're going to see a lot of us doing this where, is there actually anything in our cups like on TV? Yes, there is. Each week we're giving one lucky viewer a €100 voucher to spend on some Braeburn coffee goodness at an Apple Green store near you. To enter, check out @OffTheBall on Twitter. Just like and retweet our Braeburn competition post and you'll be in the draw. Braeburn Coffee is Apple Green's new premium coffee brand that offers customers the best coffee experience on the road. It's available now at 30 locations nationwide. Now, after the ads, we're live with Alan Quinlan from New Zealand, reflecting on Ireland's first test defeat over the weekend. First, here's Tommy Walsh talking about Limerick.
the Limerick backline, it's very rare you criticise them, but today did it feel like they were a little bit off? And I said to you mid-game that perhaps Henry and his coaching staff kind of saw something there, and that's what they said at half-time maybe to lead to that goal.
Yeah, I think so, and they probably learned from, I suppose, the Munster final in regards they didn't really have any one defender pick up a player. There weren't anyone picking up Tony Kelly. There was no one player picking up Shane O'Donnell, Peter Duggan. It's just wherever he went, John Kiley and Kinnaird, they trusted each individual to take him on, and they didn't have one man marker as such. And I suppose with Cottle Mannion, he loves running off the shoulder, getting the pass or finding a bit of space out around midfield. He'll go onto that trusted left hand side and drill the ball over the bar. Tom Onhan the same, Glennon the same out around midfield. So I think Henry trusted his players that with the way Limerick played with the zonal defence, that they would get success from playing around with the ball out midfield and scoring from long range. And that's probably why you've seen so many wides from Galway. Now at the end, if you look at it, there was only 19 wides to 15, so there wasn't that much in the difference over the course of the 73 or 4 minutes. But I think because they were shooting from, they had to take every chance they got, because the Limerick defenders are so tight inside. Sean Finn, very few people get the better of him. Same with Mike Casey at the moment. He's back to his 2018 type form. So they were shooting from long range, and that's probably why they were shooting the wides. But the Concannon goal was how you probably get to the in behind this Limerick team, is where they had the ball out around midfield. It was a diagonal ball to the square as opposed to straight down where it's easier break. When you hit a diagonal to the square, a forward can just loop in behind and catch it from behind, and that's what Concannon just did.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Hurling Pod on OTB Sports.
I know you listened to James Cahill's podcast with Will there and Paul there a few weeks ago, but they asked James who was going to win. He said Galway, and Will was pushing him, but why do you think? Because I just really wanted to win. So I'm going to go with Kelly for the very same reason.
That's fair enough.
Join myself, Will O'Callaghan, along with James Scahill and Paul Murphy for the best insight this hurling season. Subscribe to the GAA podcast feed on the OTB Sports app now.
Things that put people off on a first date. Showing up late and getting your name wrong? Always a great start. Looking at their phone more than you? Hello? Someone who only talks about themselves. Oh really? God, aren't you great? Look, no one said dating is perfect, but at GoDating.ie we promise we'll always try and find your perfect match, because somewhere out there, there's someone for you, and GoDating.ie will help you find them. Yes, even you, socks and sandals guy. Go on, go for it with GoDating.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Right, 8:17 this morning. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you. How are you?
Oh, grand lads, now yourselves.
We're having a little bit of a debate here. I'm a bit glass half empty. Owen's glass half full. It's overflowing his cup of joy at the quality of our performance the weekend.
No joy. It's no joy whatsoever.
I don't know. I'm worried. That's the starting point.
Well, I was worried before the first test, and you should be worried anytime we play in New Zealand, even though, the last couple of years we've had 3 great results against them. But yeah, I'm with Owen on this. The glass is half full for me, which is surprising because I'm usually pessimistic. I still think it's going to be a mammoth task, to be honest, Ger, and they could get better. There's every chance they will get better. Historically, they've started their international season. Most teams do. When you're a bit rusty and stuff like that, they've a number of new players in their side. But I think we added a little bit to our own downfall in the match, and I couldn't believe the first 20 minutes how positive Ireland were playing and how they were controlling the tempo, quietening the crowd. And yeah, then the Severies try just all changes and it goes downhill after that. But if you look back at all the tries, the 6 of them, they could have been prevented. And you probably, and I'm kind of saying this from a player point of view or a coaching point of view, if you look back, you'd be frustrated and a little bit disappointed. I think they didn't cut Ireland open and have any sort of sustained pressure for a long period of time where you were going, wow, that's incredible. I think Ireland just added a little bit to their own downfall. That's not taking anything away from New Zealand. They were exceptional, and we know they can do that. They're absolutely ruthless. They have those X-factor players, and they sense a little bit of vulnerability and they go for it. And I just thought from that period after the Severies try, I think that was a period of time where Ireland needed to control the tempo a little bit, take their punishment and not let it get any worse. But it felt like a couple of knockout blows right before half time, and that really hurt them.
So, in terms of the lessons, right? Like, are some of the lessons that we're not as good as we think we are, that our front row is a real issue when it comes to scrum time at world class level, that our second rows aren't strong enough, that the difference between Conan and Doris, like Doris hasn't performed in you'd say, as in these games where we've been struggling particularly well, that like maybe going backwards, maybe in a team that's doing really well, he looks world class, but it's in these performances where you need him to do more and he hasn't done them. That, like, if we're ruthless about the problems, apart from the mistakes that we made, that the problems are a bit more fundamental than just the mistakes.
Yeah, look, of course there's issues. The scrum is an issue, and we had problems with England in the Six Nations when we had a dominant win, and I think that has to be sorted out. I don't think it's a case of. I think there's a little bit of Andrew Porter still, trying to find his feet as a loose head. He's incredibly powerful and he's a big man, and it's maybe a little bit of technique. And Tuanga Fassi just went after him there. They were kind of crabbing across New Zealand, which is technically very good. And Mike Cron, who was their scrum coach for years, would have worked with a lot of these guys. He came back in during the week because Greg Feek was out. And I remember him taking a session with us in Munster, and it was all about moving the point of contact, crabbing across a little bit, and then accelerating forward. We're probably a little bit too honest there, and there's a little bit of, there's issues there. There's no doubt, and we lost 3 scrums, and they were crucial. We lost 4 lineouts. Another one was very, very scrappy as well. So Ireland rely on those kind of launch plays and their set piece to launch attack, and their big strength in the last number of years when they've done really well is keeping the ball and keeping possession and being very efficient with their set piece. So they've got to try and find a way to sort that out this week, whether it be adjusting their feet a little bit. I thought they got very, very long with their footwork. They got to get a little bit closer, I think, and look, there's a lot of pressure coming through there, and they got that bit of vulnerability and it went for it, the All Blacks. But the lineout was an issue as well, and the gap in the lineout. And we had this problem in France, Ger, where France kept closing the gap in the lineout, and the referee didn't help that day. The referee didn't help the other day. I'm not saying it's his fault. I think Ireland have to self-police that themselves much better. We're too kind of nice and honest there. You've got to kind of start putting pressure on the referee to ensure that you get a big gap in the line-out. Obviously, when the gap closes in the line-out, it becomes a little bit harder and messier. And New Zealand defended very well. So their reaction was to put massive pressure on Ireland, get in their faces. But I thought physically we were okay in open play. You talk about the power in the second row. I thought we matched them, and we didn't get overpowered. At times they were very aggressive at the breakdown, and there was so many compliments during the week about Ireland's breakdown. So they went after us there. And on the Caelan Doris point, I think he 2 or 3 carries in the game. You want your number 8 like up in double figures. I think it's difficult at times. He's an incredibly talented player, but given that Ireland had 60% of the possession and 60% territory, you probably would want him to be making more carries. I thought Dan Sheahan was amazing. The amount of carries he made, the tackles he's making, Josh van der Fleer. I wouldn't say any of the Irish guys had a bad game, but that period just after the Sever Reach try, they made a number of mistakes. Gibson Park tapped a quick penalty where probably should have been just calm down, kick it to touch. A couple of kicks from the backfield that went straight down to Jordy Barrett, inviting New Zealand back in attack. There was a penalty from James Ryan from the kickoff, which is very uncharacteristic of him. And they got 2 tries then. So they were the real hammer blows. So, we still have some issues, of course, but I think we added to our own downfall a little bit there.
You mentioned the honesty thing, a couple of times there, Alan. How do you change that over the course of the lifespan of a squad? So say you look at that front row, how do you make them less honest or more kind of street fighters over the course of these next few years, if that's a big problem in your eyes?
I think when teams are crabbing across a little bit, it's hard to describe it here on a video. You know, you probably need a chalkboard to start talking about angles and different positions on. But I think we're very square and straight and honest. And teams are, if you can imagine, all 8 of the opposition are moving maybe a couple of inches and then changing their point of the drive that they're going, the angle they're going at. And if you're doing it as 8, it doesn't look as obvious as, we'll say, a loose head kind of running around on his own and painting the picture to the referee. So I think we've got to kind of counteract and move with it, if you like. You know, as I said, look, Andrew Porter has kind of been under a little bit of pressure there, and he's an incredible player. And I think there's just small technical issues that maybe he can sort out with John Fogarty. No quick fix solution, but I wouldn't be overly concerned that we've a major problem in the scrum. We have some problems that need to be fixed. The other issues, I think, is just trying to be far more accurate. I remember saying in November it was the most complete performance from Ireland when we beat New Zealand in all 3 of the wins. It was because Ireland were so accurate in everything they did. They kept... If you look at the first 20 minutes the other night, I thought it was exceptional. You've got to tip your hat to Ireland, say it was brilliant. It's hard to keep that going. I thought we tried to overplay a little bit too much then. So it's just getting that balance right. Regarding the line-out, well, if I was there, I'd probably be whinging and whining at the referee and looking for my captain to kind of step out of the line-out and slow down the line-outs. You might get free kicked once for it, but to be really in his face saying, we haven't got a big enough gap here. They keep closing the gap all the time. And again, it's a technical issue that people mightn't understand, but I think it does make a difference. If you have a little bit of a gap in the line-out, it stops the opposition from kind of getting across, touching shoulders, nudging you in the air, and really compressing the line-out, if you know what I mean. So it's not that, you know, we're a pushover there, but I just think we need to be a bit more street smart and be able to slow the game down a little bit and not allow teams do that to us, because, you know, that's what New Zealand ultimately wanted to do the other night, is get in Ireland's face and really rattle them, and they did so for that period. And Ireland just made mistakes in that 10 or 12 minute period when it got frantic. And it's easier it's for me to say it, but, like, you know, they're an incredible side and they can do that to anyone if they're on the front foot.
Yeah.
But I just think a couple of decisions went.
We're a fairly seasoned
right
team
there for Ireland.
Like, you know, a bunch of those players have been on Lions tours. They've been in matches where it's going against them, and it just felt like nobody knew what to do to stem the tide or to slow things down. I was talking earlier, the old GAA, like whatever the rugby equivalent is of start a fight, get somebody to go down injured, whatever it is you have to do to give everybody 2 or 3 minutes and just say, okay, what the hell is happening? Why aren't we doing the things we said we would do? Everybody needs to go back and start taking individual and collective responsibility for it.
Well, to be honest, Ger, we want, in fairness, we've criticised the team before for not being expansive and ambitious.
But when the game's going against you,
correct.
right? That's what I'm talking about.
So what? Yeah, and I agree with you. So what do you do? One of the things I highlighted and I looked at in that period is we kicked back a few balls, and New Zealand kicked the ball 28 times in the game. We only kicked it 20. So that kind of tells a story that we were trying to play more, particularly in that second half. I thought the response was brilliant in the second half. But at times we kicked up the touch lines and up the middle of the field. And sometimes, you know, when we were kicking out of defence, I just thought some of those kicks could have went into the stand. Even if you're only getting 10, 15, 20 yards and it goes out to touch, it just slows the game down a little bit. Whereas if you're kicking to Jordy Barrett and Borden Barrett, who dropped into the backfield a lot, they're running back, they're bringing their wingers in, you're having to defend again. And ultimately, you're at a risk of being broken down, if you know what I mean, against incredible players. Like, these guys are just, they're absolute beasts. I was standing beside some of their backs, and they're bigger than, you know, most wing forwards. They're powerful and they're explosive. and you continue, like Geordie Barrett is 6'5" and he's an incredible rugby player. He's 110 kilos and you're kicking the ball downfield. I don't think we kicked aimlessly. I'm not saying the kicks were bad, but I think tactically a couple of those could have been pumped into the stand, and it just might have slowed the game down.
Okay.
We also got a tiny little bit narrow at times in defence.
A couple of specific things. You talked about Mike Cron. He's I just Googled him there. He's coaching away. He's 65. He's technically retired. Should we get him over for 6 months? Is that the type of thing that we should be looking at and learning from over the course of this?
Yeah, well, for sure. And he came to Ireland a couple of years ago, and he, the latter parts of my career, and he was with Munster, and he was brilliant. And he's been this scrum guru for a long time. He works with World Rugby now, and he analyses a lot of the matches, all the international matches, does reports for World Rugby and the referees as well. So, yeah, maybe I think he has a wealth of knowledge and experience. So that's something that, you know, I'm sure.
Do a month with the 4 provinces. Do a month with the 2 months with the senior national team. There's 6 months. Give them the contract, whatever it takes to get everybody thinking along these terms. The other issue is that people are texting in saying moving Porter to tight head doesn't make sense. We've no backup there now and haven't developed loose heads either. Bad planning. This is the whole moving Porter across, and obviously to loose head. We don't have depth as we saw at the weekend, and partly that's because of the injuries that have happened. But we haven't had that depth. Is it too late now for us to get depth over the next 12 months? It seems like it is. Is there something?
Yeah, look, it's difficult. You just can't invent players. And look, the backup to Cian Healy, who's had an incredible international career and has been ever present. The idea to move Porter over was to be the successor to Cian Healy. You'd love to have more. Finlay Bealham is there as a tight head, Tom O'Toole. But, Jeremy Loughman gets picked on the tour, who I think has big potential and needs to be coached better, and probably there's improvement there. But it's difficult. It's tricky. I think, listen, we were hailing this 6 months ago when, in November, when you had Furlong and Porter on the field together. And we were talking about world-class front row with Kelleher.
Yeah, we need to stop talking about that, though.
And the
we do, because they're not a world-class front row if they're getting destroyed by England, and they're getting destroyed now by
the All Blacks. It's a difficult period for them. I think they can be. I think Porter still can be a top-class international loosehead, and he is, but he's just technically getting caught by a few props. I do think that, Kelleher is a loss, even though Sheahan was absolutely amazing. But I think one or the other coming off the bench, having Henderson there, or Tyburn coming on and off the bench, Jack Conan coming off the bench, or O'Mahony, we lost a little bit of that impact with a couple of players, and we don't have the depth in certain positions, and that's just a reality.
Well, let's talk about selection then for next week. Is there a case for moving Tyburn into the back row and getting Ryan Baird on the team so that we beef up the line-out options and that we beef up the physicality of the team? Or it doesn't seem as if they think Ryan Baird is a starter at this stage. They haven't included him.
And I was surprised that he I wasn't surprised that Kieran Treadwell was there and he came on and he was ahead of him in the Six Nations. It's certainly an option to get him involved, given the impact and the energy that he has, and exposing him really to a really hostile situation and playing against the All Blacks here in New Zealand. It could be an option. I think if Ian Henderson was there, there's probably an option to move Byrne into the back row. I don't think it'll happen. I think the line-out issues we had were probably just timing issues. And I think Paul spoke to the media on Sunday about that. And it was timing. It was probably... because again, I look back at the France game in the Six Nations, and there's a couple of throws where it's hitting the top of the jumper, and there's nobody up there with them. It's a timing of the lift or timing of the throw. So they need to get better at that. Regardless of changes, I think Jack Conan's impact off the bench was very good. You mentioned that about Doris, but I'm not sure if there'll be that many changes. I think. You might think I'm crazy to say this, but I'd be thinking of putting Gary Ringrose in the wing and playing Bundyaki and Henshaw together in the centre to try and, beef up our physicality in that backline a little bit.
We've been talking about that for years here. Let's try it and see what happens.
That's not any kind of knocking Keith Earls' performance. I thought he was brilliant and the try he scored. But Ringrose is kind of special, and Henshaw, they both had great moments in the game where they were making a lot of ground in that second half. So they have to defend better, Ger, to have any chance the weekend. Make it really, really difficult, even when they're under pressure for New Zealand to get any sort of line breaks. And then, look back at that first 20 minutes. So the glass is half full. That, like Owen, but you could get to stride too. These guys can just, if they change gears, they can be extremely, extremely dangerous. But I think Ireland can have a go at them, and hopefully they will have a real crack off them on Saturday.
One of the things that we keep talking about when it comes to the conversation of depth is what happens if Ireland get injuries, and these players need to come in and replace them. But I think maybe what's kind of obvious now is that depth needs to be there for players who are out of form as well. And like you make the point, if Ian Henderson was in there, you put Byrne in the back row. Is there a chance actually that it would just be James Ryan who would miss out at this point? Doesn't make the starting 15 for a while, plays himself back into form, and all of a sudden the depth works a little bit better on that level. It feels that he kind of has to keep playing now because of a lack of options.
It could be, yeah, but he has got to keep fighting through this period as well, because he's not. We were so spoiled with what James Ryan brought in the early parts of his career a couple of years ago. It was just sensational, constant carries, impacts over the game, like big moments. He's fighting to try and find that kind of form again, and sometimes as a player you've just got to keep going. I thought he put himself about, made loads of tackles, loads of carries the other night. It's not that he's playing bad, we just don't see him as prominent as we probably did at the start of his career. But look, even for the team that played the Maoris last week, I still think you can learn a lot on this tour. I know obviously you want to get results, but the issues around scrums and lineouts and things like that, and controlling tempo and all that kind of stuff, well, there's certain guys are learning and watching it firsthand. Even the players in the squad, they're seeing this up close and personal, and as a group they can try and learn from that. So I think the ultimate goal really was obviously to try and win a test match here, but I still think they can still learn a lot from this. It's really, really important. We said it on Friday that it doesn't end up being a big score at the weekend. I have a feeling Ireland will be better. I believe they'll really make a go of this on Saturday. I'm not saying they'll win, but I think they will be better. My big fear then, when I start thinking about what New Zealand can do, but it's a learning curve for everyone to see what the characters are like, and can they use that going forward for next year.
Yeah. What about Sexton? And we've been talking really since he made it clear after the Lions that he wanted to go to the next World Cup about how dangerous it would be for Ireland to try and rely on Sexton because of the injury profile and the position he plays in. He gets hit a lot, and maybe it's tackle technique. I don't know enough about that to be able to speak to that, but certainly he's gone in the middle of the game, early in the game, at the weekend. Do we now just need to say, if you make it to the World Cup, great, but we're going to plan not to have you in all our big games? Because it just seems like it's a bad idea to put the eggs in the basket of somebody who's coming to the end of their career. We did it with Rory Best, and it backfired horribly in the last World Cup. It could easily just have the same thing again, where he's over the hill by the time the World Cup rolls around, but we haven't given any game time to anybody else, and so therefore nobody else had the opportunity. So is this now, irrespective of whether or not he's fit, pick Carberry at the weekend and go with it?
I'm divided on that. I really thought Carberry, there was something about him when he came on the other night that I really liked. I thought even when he went for that try when Rico Ioane stopped him, there was something about him the other night that I liked. I liked that he had to be thrown in at the deep end. He did play really, really well in a tough situation, but I think he was going to start a test anyway, Carberry here. I think that was the whole idea. So he could start anyway at the weekend, and maybe it's a case of play Sexton next week. I just think, you make a very valid point of hitting a World Cup next year and the fly halves behind not having enough game time then, and we're kind of. But after a World Cup, Ger, that's when your rebuild starts as well. And I don't think, you just got to deal with it then when it happens. I think if there were the fly halves behind, we're putting more pressure on Johnny Sexton, but they're not challenging the same. So it's. I think Joey Carberry, as I said, did really well the other night. But if Johnny Sexton's fit at the weekend, would I start him? I just think his mental strength and his resilience and the power and presence that he has, I probably would. People will probably disagree and say, well, we need to get Joey Carberry out in the field. But I don't know. I think the third test is probably one where I would start Carberry, but I'm not sure what they'll do yet.
It's also kind of like just the leadership element of things, as opposed to the number 10 that he is, like that early hit that.
I know it's not that's the thing. It's not that the playing ability, because I think Joey Carberry's taken strides in the last few months. He started France coming on at the weekend as well. It's just presence. I think they need to try and learn a little bit off Sexton, get a bit narky like him, be more vocal. You want your fly, you have to be really, really vocal. And to be fair, Joey Carberry seems to be a little bit quiet. He needs to start bossing people around the field. I'd love to see him doing that.
It's also like
I don't know what they're going to do.
That moment early in the game when Ringrose has that tackle on Sam Kane, you can see Sexton being like, what a hit. And kind of like that, just it wasn't goading, but he made sure that Sam Kane could hear it, or that the All Blacks players could hear it. And it was just that level of needle. And like, I wonder, does that kind of come back to this wider conversation that you were talking about in the scrum about honesty? And, is there just enough of an edge about this Ireland team outside of Sexton?
They're all lovely fellas.
Yeah, with the exception of Sexton in that sort of moment. And I'm sure there are other exceptions in the squad.
Exception of Peter Romani as well.
Yeah, like there's another example. Like, but that's two players. Is there enough of that across the team even, let alone the squad, the Ireland starting 15?
Maybe not. It's rich coming from me.
No, you're exactly what we need.
Yeah, look, you probably need a little bit more of an edge. I was kind of pumped up on Friday being at the press conference, the captain's run myself, just thinking, I'd love to kind of, I'm not saying even when I was playing that I would have played well, but it was kind of one of those ones where you're going into the real deep end here, and you're going to get smashed, and you're going to get hit, and you'd love to have a fight there and kind of really get stuck into them. But look, I think they're incredibly tough players. Like Robbie Henshaw's the machine. Like, you know what I mean? You're not going to go out in the field and intimidate him. Robbie Henshaw'd kill me with a tackle if I thought I could kind of intimidate him. But there probably is a little bit of room just to have to be a bit more nasty and kind of have more of the Gary Ringrose hit and stuff like that, and kind of stand toe-to-toe a little bit. It's not going to win you matches, but sometimes the body language kind of generates a bit of energy amongst yourselves and stuff. But look, ultimately, I think Ireland need to technically be on the money for the next two tests to kind of any chance, and really fix the scrum, fix the line out, and hold on to the ball, and really look at what they did in the first 20 minutes. I thought it was unbelievable. I don't know what you think, but I really thought that the couple of turnovers they had, they were really frustrating New Zealand, and ultimately they were going to turn and have a purple patch. But the 3 tries they scored, starting with the Sever Reece one, was kind of a devastating blow for Ireland.
It just had the bang of some of those games where we start well against the All Blacks, and then they hammer us without us almost noticing that the game is gone, and the game is gone at half time. And that's why it's also hard then to read too much into the second half, because the game is over, and we all know the game is over at that stage, really. And anytime we scored, they were scoring, or anytime it looked like we were going to score, they knocked the ball out of our hands.
But to be fair, Ger, they would have loved to put 60 points on us. You know what I mean? And it wasn't as if they stopped. So I would give Ireland some credit for that. To be fair, the way they kept, the way they came out after half time, and Ringrose got to try earlier, and they kept going. And so look, it wasn't the case that they wilted. They were under a fair bit of pressure at times as well, Ireland. But I thought it was much better in the second half. And look,
okay,
we'll judge it after the second test whether it's been disaster or not. But I think it's they have an opportunity this week. They've got to really go after it and kind of pick themselves up.
Yeah, and we're going to find out a lot about them and a lot about what their character is and whether or not they're going to do anything at the next World Cup, I would say as well. Last question. It seems like your clothes arrived anyway.
Clothes arrived on Friday, yeah, thanks be to God. And Paul helped me for a day and a half anyway, so it was good, thanks be to God. I needed the coat and some warm clothes for Saturday, but all good now, very happy, sleeping a little bit better as well.
And what part of the world are you in now? Have you moved down to Dunedin yet, or are you still
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we moved down to Queenstown today, so right. I'm slugging it out here in picturesque Queenstown, one of the most beautiful places in the world, on the lake here. So it's half the Irish people here have gone off skiing today, and there's snow on the mountains here. It's incredible. It's a beautiful place. So go to Dunedin on Thursday for the team announcement and all that stuff, and the build-up will kind of start a bit more. Then the Irish team will go down to Dunedin until Wednesday.
Right. Well, enjoy. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Cheers, lad. Thanks.
Alan Quinlan there, fully clothed from Queenstown, which everybody raves about it. It's supposed to be amazing both summer and winter. It's 8:46. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. It's time for the sports pages.
There are so many idiots out there, so many spoofers. There's a lot of horse.
I think he's a total spoofer.
What do you mean a spoofer?
He's just bullshit.
No, Eamon, come on, don't be, no, I'm not,
yes.
No.
Right. The breaking news this morning, Arsenal fans delighted. Gabriel Jesus has signed.
Yeah, he was pictured atop the Emirates Stadium in his gleaming new Arsenal kit. Wears the number 9 jersey for Arsenal.
Yeah.
Something of a coup, I think.
Is it?
Something.
How do you feel about this?
Something of a coup.
Are you a little bit concerned that one of the best teams in the world are just giving you one of their strikers at a relatively okay price?
I think that it is encouraging that a player who has been valued as a squad player, not as a starter all the time, but as a very meaningful squad player for Pep Guardiola, for a team that have gone close to the Champions League and have won a number of Premier League titles, is willing to join Arsenal. I think from Arsenal's perspective, it's something of a coup. I don't think if you're Liverpool or Chelsea, you would necessarily see that. But I think given Arsenal, they're not a Champions League club. I think this is something that could potentially get them a little bit closer to the top 4 next season, and that's what they'll be hoping for. There's question marks around where Jesus will play, where he wants to play. He says he wants to be a number 9. Obviously Arsenal have signed Eddie Nketiah up to a longer term deal, so maybe he just goes back to being an impact sub again, and Jesus plays through the middle. But even when you look at him play for the national team, you're never quite certain what his best position is. So that's just something that they need to iron out, but I'm sure that's clarity that they already have, and I would assume that Arsenal will play him as a 9 because that's what they need. The do factor here seems to have been a big thing. He's obviously been a long-term admirer of him, and that's as much of a positive slant as I can put on this thing for you right now. I know I know exactly where you're coming from.
What do you think?
With your concerns,
but
he hasn't been prolific. He scored a grand number of goals, but a grand number of goals for Manchester City. Like, he hasn't exceeded XG in a way that a Salah or Ronaldo would, and I don't think anybody's ever saying that the Jesus would have been expected to be on that level. But
you sign for Man City. You hope that you're going to get to a level where you are elite. Like, he was signed essentially to replace Aguero, or as one of those players who may go on to replace Aguero. I think was Sané supposed to be one of those players too, and that didn't happen for him. So it turns out replacing Sergio Aguero is very difficult.
It is. Like, the one thing I would say is that Jesus more than fitted into an attack where goals were coming from the left and the right, and he chipped in with a few of them himself. So if he's playing in an attack with Bukayo Saka and Emile Smith-Rowe or Gabriel Martinelli, and he is the centre point of that piece in a system that is prided a little bit upon its pressing game, and I think that works. I think it makes sense. I'm not looking at this signing being like, this could backfire spectacularly. I think it's a signing that's exciting.
Right.
And I think it shows
You're
ambition.
allowing yourself to be a little bit
it shows ambition. It shows ambition, and I think Arsenal have had very disappointing windows when they've been on the precipice of something good over the last little while. This signing says to me that Arsenal realise that next season is a massive year for them. The problem for them is that Tottenham have strengthened impressively as well, have a better manager, and Chelsea are going to be hard stopped unless they make some really bad decisions over the next few weeks.
All right. All of the newspapers have a picture of from Formula 1 yesterday. Zhu Ganyu, if I got that wrong, in his Alfa Romeo. This is just before it flips over at the opening corner of the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, and his life was saved obviously by the halo, which is over the top of the cockpit. You can see it on the car there. There's a better picture in one of the backs of the pages there. I've just missed it. So that was pretty horrific, I think, but he survived and he's okay by all accounts.
Yeah.
So loads of tennis obviously in the English papers. Pictures from the hurling on the front of the Irish Times. Limerick's jaw holds up to sturdiest of Galway punches. That was we expected the heavyweight clash to be the other one, where it was going to be toe for toe, but actually whatever, I can't get my head around what happened to Clare. It's really, really unfortunate. But fair play to Galway. Will Galway feel like this is the start of something, or will they feel like they've blown a chance to knock off the king?
The immediate thing is that they've blown a chance, and I don't think they'll be waking up this morning feeling any other way. But I think that heading into next season, when the conversation may well be who will top Limerick once again, they'll feel that they have the ability to do it. Now, of course, Kilkenny could very well go ahead and win the All-Ireland next week. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. But the probability is that Limerick will be All-Ireland champions again, and the question will be who can beat them. And Galway has shown yesterday that they have the tools to beat them. If you add Gilroy McInerney back into that team, granted Limerick weren't at full strength themselves, they'll feel that they can have a right crack off this next year. But it's just that wides count yesterday, which they'll be really, really disappointed with. And right now it's opportunity missed.
That's the hardest thing to fix, is the wides, because it's in some counties it seems to be stitched into their DNA, and it's like every year the team gets good and they reach a certain level of proficiency, and then at some point somewhere along the way wide. You're
talking as a Kildare football fan here, by any chance?
I'm looking at Mayo.
Yeah, the Cork hurlers. It obviously is just something that we kind of speak about as something that's so easy to fix. You know, the frustration we feel as we want an underdog to win on television, but actually it's the hardest bit, that composure under pressure.
All right. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Now, tune into Off the Ball each day this week, where thanks to Sport Ireland Campus, we have daily prizes of €200 vouchers that can be used towards membership at their elite gym facility and pitch rentals for your team, your kids' sports academies and camps, or a family visit to Aquazone Water Park. Plus, an amazing overall prize of €1,000 voucher, a money can't buy behind the scenes tour, and a sports team fitness testing session by an experienced strength and conditioning coach. It's all thanks to Sport Ireland Campus, the home of Irish sport, from beginners to high performance and everyone in between. Here we go. Right, at 8:52 we say good morning to Gregor Paul. Gregor, good morning to you. How are you?
Very well, thanks.
What's the general perception of how well New Zealand played amongst you and your colleagues after the game on Saturday evening?
Look, probably B plus. If we're honest, there were fundamental questions where, well, I'd say largely answered. Like, they put together, they fronted up in the areas that we talked about on air last week. You know, they brought that physicality. They love that word. You know, they set out to repair and rejuvenate their set piece, and they definitely scrummaged. They were pretty good. They had a couple where Ireland probably caused them a few troubles. I'll look at that, but on the whole, they were happy with that. Their lineup was pretty good, and in the collision work, they probably got what they wanted. They probably they edged that battle. I don't think they dominated Ireland, but they certainly edged it. So they answered the kind of key questions: are they tough enough to stand up to a pack like Ireland, who really kind of dealt to them in Dublin the year before? So we saw that, and look, they were obviously pretty ruthless in terms of, you know, Ireland dominated possession and territory. You know, they had far more of the ball and they were on the New Zealand's goal line for goodness knows how long of that game, and yet, you know, New Zealand won on the scoreboard at least quite comfortably, and that's because when they did have the ball, they finished, and they were pretty ruthless about how they went around doing that. So, look, as opening season games go, New Zealand don't have a great track record of starting well. Even at Eden Park, they've often sort of scraped over the line. So if you put it into all that context, it wasn't bad. It was a reasonably good performance.
And the graph is going up by the sounds of what you're saying there. We can expect a tougher version of New Zealand even just this Saturday in Dunedin.
Oh, well, look, I mean, they're going to have to, because I imagine they're going to get a tougher version of Ireland, which they'll know, because I think Ireland would be reasonably, despite the scoreline and the disappointment, would be reasonably buoyed by the number of opportunities that they had, the troubles that they were causing New Zealand, certainly to get behind them. You know, New Zealand defended their goal line amazingly well, but, you know, why were they defending their goal line? Because Ireland had found a way to get there. So they're going to need to look at that. Look, it's the All Blacks, isn't it? And you would imagine if they're going to be the team that they want to be, they're going to have to find another gear. And typically we do see them, to go through. They will be much better in Game 3 of this series than they will be in Game 1, and I think Ireland found that out the last time they were here when they got a bit of a royal hiding in Game 3. So yeah, look, that is the All Black way. They tend to accelerate once they've got off the mark with that first game under their belt.
There was no sign of the disruption to the coaching ticket and the COVID in the camp having any impact on the preparation, or was there? Should we actually expect them to be even better because they'll have an uninterrupted build up to the game next week?
No, I think these things are a wee bit exaggerated. How disruptive it was. I mean, look, they would have done a lot of their planning, a lot of their work prior to that final week. I think the greater disruption for them was probably losing David Havili, who would have been playing at inside centre for them. And he's a completely different player to Quinlan Tupaia, who they played.
Just having a little bit of gremlins on the line there this morning.
The Wi-Fi had been so strong in New Zealand all the last 2 weeks. Finally given up. An omen for this Saturday, of course.
Good or bad for us?
The Wi-Fi, or
is the omen good or bad for us?
It's a good omen.
Gregor's back there. Sorry, you were just saying that the inside centre situation would have been more important really than the COVID. In that context, then, what? Because we've been talking about the pressure that the coaching ticket were on basically since last November. Does that pressure immediately ease with a 3-test victory here, which, you know, New Zealand are clearly on track for now? They're double-digit point favourites again heading to the game this weekend, and I think everybody expects them to win this weekend as well. So have they done enough to prove that actually this coaching ticket will now take them through to the next World Cup more than likely?
No, look, I mean, you'll have probably been observing the All Blacks and the New Zealand media for long enough to know that one game, like, it eases a tiny fraction of the pressure, doesn't it? But it doesn't let the valve right out by any means for them. I mean, look, they haven't won the series. What they've done is they've put down a reasonably good marker that said, okay, the benchmark level that we've got to build on from here. The pressure is going to stay on them certainly until the end of the series. And I think if they don't win the next 2 games, it will be right back upon them. But they've got to go to South Africa after they've played Ireland. I mean, it's a tough start to anyone's season, isn't it? 3 tests against Ireland and then 2 on the road in South Africa. Look, a lot of people won't be ready to take any pressure off this team until we see how they go against South Africa as well, who, look, they weren't brilliant by any means against Wales, but you can see that they're a very basic team, aren't they? And they pose a very simple question: is how big and how tough are you? Can you stop our rolling maul? Can you get the ball off us? And are you prepared to just tackle enormous people that we're going to send hurling at you time and time again? So until we get through those 5 tests, no, the pressure, if anything, look, the pressure is even more important that they build on what they did last week in Dunedin this week.
What did you make of Ireland? Carefully considered take to cut through any Irish hope that we might have had this week. Is he there?
We're just getting him back there. It's 8:58 this morning. You can give us a comment on the YouTube channel if you want, or you can tweet us at Off the Ball AM. Try again on.
I was just asking you, Gregor, what you thought of Ireland.
Well, I thought the scoreline probably didn't reflect what they put into the game. I don't think there were 20 odd points between the two teams. Look, they learned a lesson though, didn't they? Like they played a lot of good rugby, but that's all great and wonderful against the All Blacks. But what you've got to do is you've got to convert that opportunity into points, and you've got to pile the scoreboard pressure on. And when Ireland have beaten the All Blacks in the past, it's because they've done exactly that. They've had half a chance or one chance, boom, they score, and that keeps you in the game. I thought they'll be reasonably encouraged about the mileage that they got. They troubled the frontline All Black defence for quite long periods of the game. Their set piece was okay. I thought their scrum might be a bit worried if the All Blacks get that component right for them this week. I thought Ireland might be in a wee bit of trouble there. But look, they're competitive, and look, they met a highly motivated All Black team, and they stayed in the fight for 80 minutes. And I don't mean that to be condescending. I mean, there's plenty of teams at Eden Park that would be 35, whatever they were, down and going home, 58, 62 on the scoreboard. So they didn't let that happen. So there's a lot of heart there. And look, they'll enjoy playing in Dunedin. It's hard, it's fast, definitely going to be dry because there's a roof on the stadium. And I think that'll suit Ireland. So look, I think they'll be travelling with a bit of confidence, and they should be too.
When you say confidence, right, do you still expect New Zealand to win well, but it'll be a closer game on the scoreboard? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, maybe. Look, I think they would have come away thinking, look, we scored 19 points, and with a bit of luck, a bit of composure, a bit of whatever they were missing. I mean, how many times did they get over the line? Well, I mean, if every time they went over the line, if they'd scored, I don't know what the score would have been. So look, when I say they should have a bit of confidence, there's not a lot of teams that can walk away from Eden Park and think, yeah, look, I can't remember how many tries Ireland scored, whether it was 2 or 3 tries, and really we could have actually had 5 or 6 tries. That's not many teams have been able to do that. So when I say confident, look, they did enough to know that the All Blacks are not infallible, and that the same rules apply to them that apply to everybody else. So like, I think that they should feel that they could win the game. I know that might seem a bit of an egregious claim to make. Ireland can beat them in Dunedin, but there's actually no reason why they can't do it. The gap between the two teams doesn't look overly large at the moment.
One of the key things from an Ireland perspective is that when we play in this part of the world, we have a very strong understanding of exactly what the rules at the ruck are going to be. And this was something Andy Farrell brought up in a roundabout way, talking about there's supposed to be a depth to the ruck. We'd like to understand how that rule is going to be applied. And something like that seems, on the face of it, either churlish or childish and a bit razzy to be bringing up in the aftermath of it. But it is interesting in that if the ruck was refereed differently, like it might be in the Northern Hemisphere, there would have been early penalties for New Zealand. They wouldn't have been able to slow the ball down, and Ireland might have been more clinical in the 22, for example, and that possession might have converted to points. So it's hard to have this conversation without coming across like, wow, look at us, we got refereed off the park. Do you know what I mean? So is there a way of having that conversation and going, is there anything in this that might be of interest this week coming?
I think I would have understood Farrell's point a wee bit better if it hadn't been an English referee. So, like the All Blacks and look, Super Rugby gets refereed a certain way because it's Kiwi, Australian referees that are refereeing it. But we had an English referee, so presumably he interprets the game in the same way he does whether he's refereeing in the Southern or the Northern Hemisphere. So I didn't quite understand quite what he was getting at there. However, to your point, look, the breakdown, we all know every team in the world has a different view about what they can get away with, where the entry point is. I think what Andy was saying is that New Zealand seemed to have a wider gate. Their guys were able to sort of approach the ruck from kind of wherever they felt like, and we're obviously going right through the back of the ruck, taking guys out way after the ball. I'm assuming that's what he was getting at when he said it. And look, I mean, I didn't really see it, but we never normally do when you're watching it. It's hard to tell. Coaches see micro detail that beyond my understanding. But look, it'll probably change again next week because the referee will change. And maybe the All Blacks will be whining about something next week, that they didn't get this or they didn't get that. Where I thought Ireland had a couple of legitimate claims, I thought the Joey Carberry try, look, we've seen plenty of those being awarded in Super Rugby this year. Didn't look like there was clear separation, so I thought that was a try. I also kind of thought he was high tackled on the way over the line. And definitely the referee got in the way when New Zealand scored their final try, pick up off the back of the scrum. I mean, he was completely in the way. He blocked him, and he just got in the way, but he didn't. So I thought Ireland were actually probably had a few grievances that were legitimate, but not necessarily the ones that Andy Farrell brought up after the game.
Will Barrett be cited, do you think, or has the window closed for that? I'm not sure what the time difference, what the crack is with that.
No, he won't be. The window's gone with that. It needed to be earlier on today, and it didn't happen. So I'm assuming that's not able to happen now.
Right. That seems like, look, when we put it up on Twitter, people were like, oh, what about the high tackle moments before that from Jemison Gibson Park? And sure, fair enough, I'm sure there was a high tackle from Gibson Park, but it did seem like it was no arms, head to neck area, and not looked at. That's the type of stuff that, as a test series goes on, leads to a little bit of rancor. So I there might be a bit of spiciness this weekend.
Yeah, look, I'm not a big fan of slowing clips down, because you end up seeing things that might not be there. But on this particular occasion, and look, Barrett's got a bit of previous for doing this. It's not the first time he's led with the shoulder in exactly that manner of getting a wee bit frustrated at a breakdown, charging in with his shoulder and clunking someone on the head. And look, the referee was right there. And it looked for all the world to me that, look, he didn't use his arms. He's charged in, direct contact to the head. We've all watched this game for the last 3 years enough to know, well, there's nothing mitigating. Well, I didn't think that there was, despite the fact that Manny's head was down. Barrett didn't need to do that. I mean, that was a red card, surely, wasn't it? I thought it was a red card, looking at it again. And I don't quite understand, when the referee's right there, how on earth he didn't come to the same conclusion. And given that TMOs seem to interfere at the drop of a hat these days, they'll find anything and everything to interfere and say, look, there's foul play there. I'm genuinely at a loss as to why that wasn't even looked at. That seemed a crazy decision to me, to not even look at it. Yeah.
Maybe that was one of the things that Andy Farrell was hinting at, that I was saying he needs to go full Razzie, release the video, see what happens. That's the rules of engagement. It turns out you get a little bit of a suspension for it, but not much, and the referee does exactly what you want the next week out.
Well, I mean, you're point about that does build frustration for players, because it's not when you get these inconsistencies, and that was, I thought, pretty clear cut right in front of him. I'm not sure how he thought that Barrett hit him on the body. He clearly hit him on the head. He clearly didn't have an arm. I mean, how obvious does this need to be? And to then say, I'm not even going to look at that, probably did get O'Mahony pretty fired up. And I would imagine you're right. There'll be a little bit of blood boiling in the first 20 minutes in Dunedin. And hopefully it's blood boiling in all the right ways. It's intense and passionate rather than sort of off the ball and a bit niggly. But it's frustrating because referees need to do their jobs a bit better than that.
Yeah, 100%. Gregor, great to have you with us again. Thanks a million. Cheers.
My pleasure.
Enjoy the game. That's Gregor Paul giving us some thoughts from New Zealand. A reminder, OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what we got coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. James McLean in studio, OTB Gold at 1 o'clock, Splonk at 3. Our Culture Hall of Fame is Kenny Cunningham talking about faulty towers. Yes. Lockdown was mad, wasn't it?
It was a good time.
Yeah. OTB Gold is Ray Boom Boom Mancini at 6. And then the show is live tonight with Johnny Ward on hosting duties after the weekend. A devastated Johnny Ward, who was at Croker watching his beloved Galway, just, but not quite, come up short. You can follow Off the Ball across all our social channels. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Be sure to download the OTB Sports app. Up next, we're live with Tipperary legend Padraic Maher reflecting on the weekend's hurling semi-finals. First, here's Limerick manager post-match reaction yesterday. John Kiley talking with Stephen Doyle. Back soon.
OTB.
The feeling after that game, where I suppose Galway really were in it right until the 66th minute, is it more of a feeling of happiness or relief to get to your third consecutive final?
Yeah, there's a certain amount of relief, to be fair. Like, it was one of those games that could have gone either way, but ultimately I think we kept calm, kept composed, trusted in what we were doing on the pitch in terms of sticking to our process, and we also trusted our lads coming off the bench in the last 20 minutes, so really pleased with the contribution that they made.
We've seen Limerick pull away from teams easily in a lot of games, or well, not easily, but by big margins over the last couple of years. How do you think Galway managed to stay so close to you in the closing stages?
Well, I know their accuracy wasn't great in the first quarter, but I think for the last 3 quarters their accuracy was very good. And listen, they've got fantastic forwards as well who can shoot from anywhere in the field, and they've shown that right throughout the campaign that their shots, success has been exceptionally high, and they created a couple of goal scoring chances as well. So I think they can be really happy with their performance. It was just, I think our lads in the finish coming off the bench made a difference in the last 15 minutes.
Absolutely. You could hear the crowds were boosted when the Cian Lynch and Peter Casey came back on, and they're coming back in just in the nick of time as well before the final. How do you assess their performance after, I know, just a short 15-20 minutes?
Listen, it's just great to get the two of them on the pitch, number one, and that game will stand to them. You could still see that they just hadn't maybe as much work done as the others had done, obviously. When you're out that into time, it's hard to come back and be at the same pitch as the other players. But I think, all credit goes to Conor and to David Reedy, and those lads coming on as well, have been doing it for us all season, so we have to remember that as well.
Dermot Burns' long range freeze in the second half really, I suppose, made the difference for Limerick. Is there a concern about the lack of points of play maybe in that second half?
Listen, I think it's a measure of the quality of the defending that Galway put into, and listen, we had 1 or 2 guys that we wouldn't be happy about. Dermot has 1 or 2 that he wouldn't be happy with as well, so listen, there's lots for us to go back and work on. Our performance today was enough to get through, but it won't be good enough the next day, we know that, so we have to work really, really hard in order to be up to the level that's going to be required given what we saw yesterday.
Yeah, because it was a real physical battle today. Kilkenny will certainly match Galway in that sense.
Absolutely, yeah, and their performance yesterday was flawless, and they're obviously the form team going into the final.
Marginal gains? XG? Top speed? Recovery? What's it all about? Want to improve but don't know where to start? With more data than ever now available, OTB Sports have teamed up with Whoop to cut through the noise and help you raise your game, no matter the sport. OTB Sports are delivering the metrics that matter. Meaningful metrics in partnership with Whoop, the personalised digital fitness and health coach that helps you unlock your inner potential. See whoop.com for more. Follow OTB Sports social channels for the best insights and stats this season.
Things that put people off on a first date. Showing up late and getting your name wrong? Always a great start. Looking at their phone more than you? Hello? Someone who only talks about themselves. Oh really? God, aren't you great? Look, no one said dating is perfect, but at GoDating.ie we promise we'll always try and find your perfect match, because somewhere out there, there's someone for you, and GoDating.ie will help you find them. Yes, even you, socks and sandals guy. Go on, go for it with GoDating.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, 12 minutes past 9. Carl Mullaney is with us. We're going to talk hurling with Padraic Maher in just a minute. I know you were working on the minor All-Ireland final.
Yeah.
Unbelievable drama at the end of that game. Unbelievable heartbreak for Offaly, and probably a bit of righteous justification that they should have had a free out in the build-up to the goal.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of outcry on social media, I know, after the game from Offaly supporters that they should have had a free just before the free in was awarded for Tipperary. Probably justified. Haven't watched the coverage back. I think a lot of people would say that maybe they could have got a free out. But what a game, what an occasion, and the way to lose it is just absolute heartbreak for Offaly, because they dominated the game. They were 6 points ahead at half time. They were really on top. The crowd was behind them. They looked in total control, and even with all the players back, the fact that McCormack got that flick to it, what a finish it was, by the way.
Like, that's the other thing, the never say die attitude from the Tip miners is something that it's very hard to coach that level of resilience. You can work on it and you can talk about it, but for them to just have that as well.
Yeah, I mean, what an achievement. And the scenes, I mean, they were so chaotic, because a puck out happened after that goal went in, and the sideline was very chaotic at that stage, and then the final whistle was blown. Offaly actually got possession from the puck out and had a chance, but they they lost possession and Tipperary won it back, and then the final whistle was blown. But what a game, what an occasion. Sellout crowd in Nolan Park. Just wonder for the players at that age, when they're only 16 and 17, it's such a difficult thing to comprehend for the Offaly players that it was just taken from them right at the very end. But what a great occasion.
Padraic Maher is with us. Padraic, good morning to you. How are you?
How are you doing, lads?
Yeah, before we get to the seniors, the response in Tipperary to the minors, I was just saying there, incredible fortitude for them to come back from 6 points down and to come back at the last minute and to win it. Heartbreak for Offaly, and I'm sure your heart goes out to them, but at the same time, there's something steely about that Tip minor team as well.
Yeah, you know, I was down there during myself yesterday in Nolan Park, and I suppose it was an unbelievable occasion. You know, 27,000 people all there for the minors. You know, if that was above in Crow Park, everyone's there predominantly for the senior game, and the minor game probably gets overlooked. So, first of all, it's a fantastic occasion. The atmosphere was unbelievable, and the game lived up to the atmosphere and the occasion then as well. It was just unbelievable, and the way they finished then, obviously, you know, Tipperary would be absolutely delighted the way they snuck the victory, but you'd have to feel for Offaly, like, you know, to lose an All-Ireland like that, and especially when you're only 16, 17 years of age, that is tough, like, but you'd be hoping that they learn from it and they'll use the experience going forward to help them, because there's some cracking hurlers. Yeah,
and hopefully that's the rebirth of Offaly hurling, or the start of it anyway, because it'd be great to see them back competing for Leinster titles the way, you know, they were 20 years ago. Let's talk a little bit about the Saturday game first then, if we can get your thoughts on that, Padraic. The non-appearance of Clare in that first half, obviously Kilkenny need to get huge credit for it. It's one of the all-time great 35 minutes from Kilkenny. It's right up there with their All-Ireland final against Waterford all those years ago with a completely different team. So how do you judge that? Is it Clare not showing up? Is it Kilkenny? Is it all on Kilkenny's greatness in that first half? What's the split?
I would say Kilkenny definitely upped their performance, obviously, from what they've been producing the last couple of weeks. You know, they were absolutely outstanding all over the pitch, and they put so much pressure on Clare. But at the same time, there was a bit of a malfunction in Clare. You know, they kind of were going away from what they were doing in Munster a bit. Look, they were so direct with the ball, and that's what Kilkenny love. I know from my own experience down through the years, and it's the way the Kilkenny players are brought up. They're used to that man and man, you know, high field, and, you know, beat your own man in their own position. And Clare kind of played into their hands that way. You know, they were just dumping the ball down the field, and fair enough, you had Peter Duggan in that in the full forward line for Clare, but, you know, Hugh Lawler and these lads just gobble up them high balls, and it suited them to the ground. So I would say, you know, 60% if it was Kenny's performance and the way they approached the game, and, you know, the other 40 of them was kind of Clare, a bit of malfunction from what they were used to over the last couple of weeks.
Do you think Clare got in their own heads a little bit in preparation for this game then, going away from what it was that had made them so brilliant in Munster over the last 2 months?
I wouldn't say that, like, you know, Clare, that's why their third appearance in Crow Park since 2013 final, including the 2013 final. So, you know, you can't say that they probably got ahead of themselves. You know, it's just, I suppose, the pressure of and the occasion of the semi-final, and then obviously again, as we spoke about, the pressure that Kilkenny put on them. And, you know, Kilkenny are used, that's Kilkenny's backyard for all the world after Nolan Park. You know, that's where they play all their hurling mostly. So, you know, they're well used to the occasion and the surroundings, I suppose. And I suppose Clare probably the occasion maybe got them a small bit. But you'd have to say, look, fair enough, Clare didn't produce what they have produced in Munster. But Kilkenny definitely upped it.
Oh, Skype has gone there to Padraic. We'll get him back in a second. I guess my point is did Clare overthink it a little bit, like going away from the patterns of play that have been so spectacularly successful for them, and maybe they weren't allowed to. I don't know. That's the bit that we'll have to try and sift through over the next 2 weeks.
Well, I guess the point still stands that Clare had 24 wides. So that suggests that Kilkenny maybe weren't as bulletproof as the final result might suggest. And you have to ask the question, why did Clare have so many wides? Is that a combination of factors in terms of back in Crow Park, the pressure Kilkenny exerted on them, the pressure of playing in an All-Ireland semi-final, or was it just an off day? Maybe a combination of all of those sort of factors. But definitely a sense from Clare's point of view that you know, if you even reduce that wides tally by 6 or 7, you're kind of in the game and still hanging on, even when they were struggling at various stages. Disappointing end to the season for them. Obviously, they exerted so much energy in the Munster Championship as well that maybe it just was a bridge too far. But I mean, from Brian Cody's point of view, I mean, he has masterminded this again. They're timing the run to perfection, and it's not that long ago that, you know, we were saying that the Leinster Championship final against Galway was subpar in terms of its standard. And then you see the turnaround in Kilkenny's performance the last day. And I think it's Eddie Brennan writing in the Independent this morning about how they love to have that 4-week break when he was playing as well. That it was the ideal preparation time from a Kilkenny point of view, and that you can get the previous fixture out of the system, the lads can have a night out, then you can have your training weekend, and then these internal matches that we hear so much about from a Kilkenny point of view.
It sounds like they were doing a lot of that.
Yeah,
that's what Cody was saying, they were doing a lot of that. Padraic Maher's back with this. The point that Cahill makes about the wides that Clare had, again, you know, is that malfunction that we're talking about. A lot of that is on them, some of it's on Kilkenny, and that's the thing that's going to annoy them. But it's also, I wonder, perhaps the thing that gives them a bit of comfort. They created a lot of chances, and next time they're there, they'll actually be more used to the surroundings, and they should be able to score points at a higher clip.
Yeah, definitely. Like, you know, they produce a lot of I suppose chances, but look, I'd argue then as well that they had 24 wides, but probably 10 or 12 of them shouldn't even be taken on from the positions in the field, I felt myself. But they did get a lot of opportunities, and again, maybe it was just that obviously lack of execution, but, you know, a bit of composure on the big day maybe as well, and the thing was away from them, you know, fairly early on. So, a lot of wides, and you can't afford to be shooting that amount of wides in a Ireland semi-final against Kilkenny, you know, especially when Kilkenny are so in form.
The thing about the growth of this Kilkenny team is that they've actually unearthed starters who are as good as anybody else in the country in almost every line of the pitch. We've known for ages that Adrian Mullen was going to be really good. He got his injury, he's recovered from his injury, he's back to where he was. We've known for ages that Owen Cody was going to be good. They're 2 young hurlers of the year, but they're now like proper, they're men, and they're playing like men. It's the defence that has added, you know, stereotypical teak tough Kilkenny defenders who are not backing down, but who also have ball playing skills that are able to find little pockets of space for the man that they're passing to. So is that what's transformed Kilkenny from a team who we didn't really think were genuine All-Ireland contenders into a team who now are All-Ireland contenders, clearly?
Yeah, you know, definitely they've evolved their game, you know, in the last few weeks, definitely. You know, obviously Kilkenny were renowned for their, you know, more direct approach to the game, but they're definitely, you know, mixing it up now with the short ball. You know, Richie Reid, centre back there, sitting in the pocket, is definitely, you know, after changing their style even himself alone, because, you know, he's able to give that long ball, obviously, but he's very good at picking out treading the ball through the middle of the field as well, the short 30 or 40 pass that opens up defences. So they're definitely evolving, and as you said, their units, their back unit was absolutely outstanding. You know, they have that grit, determination that you associate with all the Kilkenny backlines, but they're all well able to hurl themselves. You know, great ball players. You know, you can see, you know, Tommy Walsh, cornerback, Hugh Lawler is one of the best backs in the country. Young Mikey Butler's performance, you know, that spoke for itself, keeping Tony Kelly so quiet. So, you know, they're absolutely outstanding hurlers individually, but as a unit, they're so gritty, determined, and, you know, they don't give you an inch, or they don't give you anything soft. And I suppose that's what we've come to expect from Brian Cody teams down through the years. And you know, yeah, they've definitely, that performance is definitely after making them, you know, putting them up in lights and bringing them on another level or two on Saturday there.
How much does the semi-final from a couple of years back in 2019 actually matter? How much does it feed into any of the conversations that are happening in the Limerick changing room, or even amongst the Limerick management team? Is there any relevance to that game at all, to this game coming in 2 weeks?
I think myself that Limerick will have that in the back of their minds, that, you know, the one blip they've had since 2018 has been that game against Kilkenny in 2019, and you know, Kilkenny probably definitely deserved to win that day. You know, their work rate was absolutely savage that day, because we'd been watching it because we were on the other side of the draw the same year. But I think Limerick will have that in the back of their minds. You know, obviously they're a very process-driven team, and they know what goals they have ahead of them, but that will be in the back of their mind, I feel, as well, that, you know, these lads put a stop to us in 2019. You know, we're going to get one over them. They're probably the one team we haven't beaten to win an All-Ireland, so they'll probably want to polish it off win the 3 in a row by beating Kilkenny, and they'll feel like they have everyone beaten en route over the last number of years, and no one will be able to have any question marks over them after it. So I think it'll play a small bit into the psyche of Limerick. Not a whole lot, but it will be that small little, bit prodding into them that, lads, we have to prove these lads wrong and prove everyone wrong. And, I feel that it will give them a small bit of an edge going into the final. In a way, the semi-final, the performance from Galway was kind of the perfect tester for Limerick. It was right to the edge, but it wasn't perfect from Galway. Like, Galway also will regret the wides that they had and taken on some shots, and the shot selection wasn't great for them, and at various stages when they really needed it to just be a little bit better. So Limerick have plenty to work on, but they are through to the All-Ireland final, and they do have 2 key players returning who got a little bit of game time. Not much of an impact on the match yesterday, but certainly you would expect Lynch and Casey to be available for more hurling and more action in the final. So what did you make of Limerick's performance? Yeah, I suppose it was workmanlike. Individually, there'd be probably a few players that probably weren't overly happy with the performance, but I don't think they'll care at the end of the day. They, as a unit, got the job done. Galway threw everything at them. In fairness to Galway, I was one of them that didn't give them a chance. I thought to be a 7, 8, 9 point gap between the two of them at the end of the day, but Galway proved a lot of people wrong yesterday. In fairness to them, they put everything into it. Ides probably came against them in the finish, but Limerick will be so happy leaving there yesterday. The clip of the final whistle going and Paul Connacht embracing John Kiley, and Paul Connacht just puffing out his cheeks, in pure relief. Like, they were just happy to get the job done, get over at Galway and get back to the final. And look, individually, probably a few performance levels dropped Limerick, but as a whole, as a unit, including the subs bench, they all contributed to getting them over the line, and as you said there, getting Keane Lynch, Peter Casey back in the field. But the one man then that the Galway lads forgot about was David Reedy, and I think he changed the game for Limerick when he came on. How does somebody like Reedy come on and do that? Like, what is it about this Limerick team that allows them to have players who are capable in that instance where the team is up against it for the first time in a long time, really, in a match like where it's knockout, and I don't know, it's such a good sign of the culture that somebody is able to come on and have that impact. Exactly, yeah. And they talk about this panel and a 26-man game, and even the 4 or 5 lads that aren't talking on the day, everyone contributes, in training, and that makes the team and the panel better for game day. And Limerick are showing that at the moment, taking off Gerard Hegarty, Tom Morrissey, Seamus Flanagan, Graham Mulcahy, all off the field, in the forward line. That's massive, and you think Galway are getting their job done, but then they bring in the likes of David Reedy. I think he came on midfield, so maybe it helped that he was finding pockets of space. He was actually setting up moves and finishing off the moves in a couple of occasions, and he got some cracking scores. And maybe, there was so much line out in the Limerick forwards and the 2 lads that came on that maybe really got that bit more space than that he was afforded. But that's just the culture they have, and everyone's contributing. And if anyone's to look on, or any young fellas to look on, you just look at his contribution from deciding that, look, you're not starting every day, but you're coming on, you're making massive contributions, and his contribution is one of the main reasons why Limerick are in the final. How will Galway feel this winter? Will they feel like they've made progress and that there's something starting, or will they feel like that was a big chance blown? I'd say if I put myself into a Galway pair of shoes now this morning, or Henry Shefflin's, they'll probably feel like a missed opportunity that they had, Limerick on the rack. They were giving everything. They were fighting, harassing, harrying all over the pitch, that middle third. Especially in the second half. They just didn't put them away. They weren't clinic enough with their shooting. Again, near the end when they fell a point behind, there was a few aimless long balls, again similar to what they done the day before, that probably played into Limerick's hands as Limerick were sitting back. And they're the times, they're the moments you talk about throughout the year, that you keep your composure, maybe play 1 or 2 sharp passes and work a score like they'd done early on in the game, and that just went away from in the end. So I feel like Galway will probably think it's a missed opportunity this morning. As I said, Limerick probably weren't on fire on all cylinders individually, and that was their opportunity. As I said, 4 of their starting forwards taken off. But again, Galway probably will be disgusted, especially after losing the Leinster final. But again, I suppose they finish in a bit of a high that they perform, that they know they can get to that level and challenge the All-Ireland champions. So for Henry, there's plenty to work on for next year, but you know, there is a lot of, I suppose, positives there too, that they can play with the best and mix it with the best.
Great mind games from John Kiley in the interview that we played just before you came on there, where at the end of it he was talking about Kilkenny obviously being the form team heading into the All-Ireland. You're like, not sure anybody is going to be making Limerick underdogs. They can try, but I don't think it's going to work from Kiley and Connacht's perspective. But look, as you said, there's that little chip on their shoulder about the fact that this could be a 5 in a row that they're going for. Instead, it's not, because Kilkenny obviously interrupted it. So how do you think the two teams match up?
Yeah, I think John Kiley's been he's playing a few mind games there already, and you know, even Shane Dowling yesterday in the Sunday game had a few similar comments as well. But look, that's naturally going to happen with when teams are facing each other. But matching them up, look, to me, Limerick are favourites. I'd expect Limerick to win, but nothing like what we thought they were going to do to Galway. I think Kilkenny are going to come with all guns blazing. You know, Brian Cody's after getting back into the Ireland final. You go head-to-head player for player. You know, there probably isn't a whole pile in it individually. Obviously Limerick have a fantastic unit and a squad, but then you see like Kilkenny, then they have Walter Walsh coming on. You know, Richie Hogan was held in reserve, Killian Buckley was held in reserve, you know, Conor Fogarty was as well. You know, there's a lot of experience in that Kilkenny bench as well. So look, Kilkenny are going to have the confidence too of 2019 of what they can do to Limerick when they bring all, you know, the aggression and work rate, and you know, but again, it's going to be fascinating because, as I said, Limerick have probably that chip in their shoulder with Kilkenny, but Kilkenny won't be afraid. Kilkenny are never afraid of playing anyone, and you know, so it's the makings of a fantastic game. I think Limerick will win by a couple of points, but again, you won't be surprised if Brian Cody pulls this out of the fire with Kilkenny. And like, to me, if he does, it could probably be his best All Ireland since he took over Kilkenny, however it was 23 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, that is saying something. Park, great to have you with us this morning. Thanks a million for taking the call. Cheers.
No bother, boys. Mind yourself.
Tip legend Padraic Maher there giving us some thoughts at the weekend. It would be the greatest, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, no question about it. And I wonder, would that be the time to exit stage left?
I don't know. You're not like, well, they're coming for my crown, I've got to defend it.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, but it's going to be a cracking final.
Yeah. 9:30 this morning. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. OTB AM back tomorrow morning from 7:30. Co-located. Owen is live from Adair Manor at JP McManus's Pro-Am. We'll be talking more hurling alongside Kilkenny's David Herity. Formula 1 latest with journalist Chris Medland, and ex-tennis pro Jenny Claffey will be in studio chatting the women's side at Wimbledon. Right now, we're leaving you with Tommy Walsh reflecting on the weekend's All-Ireland hurling semi-finals. Enjoy.
Let's go back to Croke Park and Tommy Welch, who's standing by. Limerick 27 points, Galway 121, a 3-point win for Limerick. Not as comfortable as that scoreline suggests, Tommy.
No, and I suppose the most important thing for Limerick is the 3 in a row is on. 14 games unbeaten since 2019, stretches out to 15, and I suppose it's the final that they've been waiting for. Like, I don't think they've made any secret of the fact that it is Kilkenny, I suppose, that they've wanted all along. You know, I suppose after 2019, I suppose also the fact that they've been traditionally one of the top 3 powerhouses of the game, going back to when hurling began back in the 1800s. So I think this is the final they needed. This is the one they wanted, I suppose, to cement their legacy, and as regards, you know, one of the greatest teams, you know, in hurling history.
Well, I'm sure it will cross their minds that this should be a 5 in a row tilt, but for Kilkenny in 19, who caught them on that amazing day, and maybe in some respects that's given Limerick that extra incentive and that extra bit of hunger to keep doing what they're doing year after year at the moment. But regardless, as you said, there'll be an extra pep in their step looking at a Kilkenny jersey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose it's, what will encourage them going into the final now is that Kyle Hayes rediscovering his form. He was absolutely wonderful in that second half. I think he's after getting man of the match, looking down, he's doing an interview there with a trophy, so he got one of the man of the matches anyway, whether it was the RT one or the Sky Sports one. He was brilliant in that second half, just came deep for a ball out around midfield, won an awful lot of ball, and as I said, Diarmaid Byrne scored that late free to put him 3 points up. So Galway had one more chance to get a goal to draw the match. Who caught the ball when the ball came down into the square? Kyle Hayes. He was gone back from centre forward, back out to around the full back line, caught the ball, and the referee blew the whistle. So I think it's their ability to depend on different players in different games. Garrod Hegarty was taken off, Tom Morrissey was taken off, Peter Casey and Lynch came on, didn't play particularly well, weren't on the ball, I'd say, at all, but a different sub came on, one that probably we weren't speaking about before the game, David Reedy, and he scored 3 points, 3 crucial points in that closing probably 20-minute period. So I think it's their ability to depend on different players at different times in different games. Like Alan, we spoke highly of him. He's 5 got in the first half from play. He scored, I'd say, only 1 more in the second half from play. So he was quite in the second half. That's when up stepped Kyle Hayes. Darragh O'Donovan had a fantastic first half. He went off. Dave Reedy came on though, and as I said, he closed it out. So yeah, listen, I'd say plenty of encouragement for Limerick out of this. They will be delighted with the big test they got here from Galway. And Cathal Mannion, we felt if Galway were to give him a chance, they'd have to score goals. Their big men would have to play well. Dahi Burke, on any of the chances where he had a chance of defending against Gillan, he was extraordinary. Any 50-50 balls he came out with, and in fairness to him, that was a right ding dong battle. Cathal Mannion scored 4 from play. Tom Monaghan scored 4 from play, and I thought Joseph Cooney had a great game throughout as well.
And how was it that Galway, after going down initially by several points to Limerick, 1, got back in the game, and then 2, found sustained joy against this brilliant Limerick side? Because not many people were predicting Galway would be able to do that.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. The first one is work rate, physicality. So when you consistently have that, it keeps you in the game when you're not hurling particularly well. And then if you get the chance, the opportunity to put the ball in the back of the net, then you're back in the game and your spirits are high because you've been working hard. Although the hurling mightn't be flowing, your energy is flowing because you're getting in the hooks, you're getting in the flicks, you're getting in the tackles, so that when you do come back into form at some stage of the game, then you can drive it on. And that's what they've done, because it was Concannon's goal really kick-started it then, after where the hurling started to flow. Mannion came into the game strongly after that, where you see Limerick don't man mark as such. It's all zonal defending. They trust each individual to win their own kind of patch, if you like. But what that does is it gives space to hurlers, and Galway have plenty of them, like Tom Monaghan and Cathal Mannion. If you want to mark them out of the game, you mark them tight, you put runners with them. But if you give them kind of zonal defence, if they get passes, they'll score points all day. Hawkeye as well was influential today. There was another point in the second half, which Fintan Burke scored from the wing half back position. Looked like it was gone wide, but it went to Hawkeye, and Hawkeye gave the point. So very, a big day for Hawkeye as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It would be an interesting experience to go back through the last any number of All-Ireland finals that didn't have Hawkeye and see if the result might have been different, because it's having an incredible effect on games at the moment.
It is, yeah.
So would you say Limerick were a fair degree below their very best today, Tom?
I don't know, they weren't allowed. And that's the one thing coming into a semi-final. You're not playing, you're playing a team that gets to the last 4. Is a good team, and I know they didn't get much credit for the Leinster final, didn't get much credit for the game against Cork, but listen, they still stuck to their tasks. The Leinster final was the only game they were beaten in so far this year, so that has to, a bad team doesn't do that, Joe. So I think they're the issue with Galway is their main players have been around a long time, and that's why I felt would they be able to turn up on the biggest day of all in the semi-final after so many games. It's ran for an older type team to turn up once every couple of weeks, but when you have to do it week in, week out with short breaks, it's much more difficult. But they did it today, and I'd say that probably was due to the fact that everyone writ them off so much. When you're written off like that, it can lead to a performance like that. But traditionally Galway have always produced in semi-finals. They're going for the double this year as well, so I'm sure Galway were on a high as a county, but out in the football parts and then inside in the hurling parts. But why were they in this game? Defensively, I said they had to get their matchups right. Joseph Cooney went on Tom Morrissey. He did very, very well. Mannion on Hegarty for most of the game. Hegarty had a lot of joy in the first half, maybe out around the middle and getting the ball in, but in the second half he did not have the same joy. There was a lot of last ditch tackles, last ditch hooks, last ditch flicks. There was plenty of rivalry on the sideline as well between Kinnerk and Henry. They were going ahead and Kiley for most of that second half, which within the rules of the game, they were only There was nothing physical or anything like that, but it was great. It was interesting to watch. It was kind of a sideshow here. Just two guys that were pumped up for every referee's decision, every tackle, every score, and it was enthralling.
Shefflin and Kinnerk both booked, if I'm not mistaken.
2 yellow cards. Yeah, I'd say Shefflin was never booked when he was hurling. Now he's
Because before the game, we were looking at Galway's firepower, and we were suggesting that aside from Conor Whelan, they might really struggle to put up reasonable numbers. Now, 121 is a reasonable number in an All-Ireland semi-final against Limerick. So who came to the fore that maybe we didn't name-check enough pre-game?
Yeah, so Whelan was quite enough, in fairness to him. He scored 2 points from play, but it was Tom Monaghan and Cottle Mannion were the main scorers from play. Both of them scored 4 points from play each. And then the scorer, Conor Cooney, in fairness to him, hit a fair few frees. Now, we were looking at as well, it looked like, say, if you're not looking at stats and if you're not looking at possibly the television, you'd say Galway were just hitting wide after wide. Again, after speaking to you, they hit a good few wides, 3 or 4 in the last probably 5 or 6 minutes.
Yeah.
And you would say, listen, is that what lost it for them? But then I was looking at it came up on the big screen here in Croke Park. Galway hit 19 wides, Limerick hit 15, so it wasn't that much of a difference really. But I suppose when they won by 3 points, possibly only 4 wides in the difference is the difference, if you like.
Well, yeah, we said they'd need everything to stick, and they'd probably need a goal, and they got the goal. Not everything stuck, but you need a day of days, don't you? Galway were always going to need a day of days.
They were always going to need a day, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Everything went probably according to plan, and the only thing that didn't probably was the wide that you hope that went over the bar. Instead of going 2 inches to the right, it went 2 inches to the left. And how close they were was them two Hawkeye decisions. The umpire gave a point in both cases, but Hawkeye came back and said it was wide. So on another day, you strike it a little bit differently off the hurl. It goes over the bar, say an inch to the left instead of an inch to the right, and suddenly you're well in the game. So
because Galway had a wide or two at a point down before Limerick went 2 and 3 clear, and so the psychology there getting back level is very different to now we've to score 2 and now we've to score 3.
Absolutely, and I think Paul Kinnerk deserves huge credit, and John Kiley as well, for it was put up to him all day long. And one of the last scores, Declan Hannon got the ball. Declan Hannon had a powerful last 10 minutes, quite enough up to that. The last 10 minutes he was incredible, but on 72 minutes, I have it down here, Hannon got the ball in around his own 14-21, and there's loads of bodies there. And if you could imagine, say when you're playing this from where we're looking up in the top of the Hogan, it's easy to see where the spare men are. But when you're down in that position, you get the ball after winning it, ferociously for a start. You look up and there's bodies everywhere. It's much more difficult to pick out that spare man. Where's the Limerick? But he picked out Hannon. He picked out Kyle Hayes. Kyle Hayes won it, and there was loads of bodies around. He gave it to David Reedy and really put it over the bar, and that put him either 2 or 3 points up. And that was Kinnerk. So they're able to do the toughness, the hard work, winning the ball in the air, the puck outs. But even when it came to the 72nd minute, when they were under pressure, when people maybe might revert back to type A, which is hoof the ball down to the far end of the field, they had the wherewithal, they had the focus, they had the confidence to play around with the ball, the style they've been training for the last 4 or 5 years, and score a point that probably sealed the path to the All-Ireland final for them.
I'm just watching a replay of some of the big moments, and certainly there was a moment late on where Galway were in possession and they just tried to play a cute ball inside, and they were turned over, and straight away Limerick stick it over the bar. And those small things again need to go your way. It's worth mentioning perhaps, Tommy, as well, Diarmaid Byrnes slotted over a couple of big frees late on from distance, as Diarmaid Byrnes has done all season and beyond.
Yeah, huge. 6, 5 in the 1 in the first half, 5 in the second. And
that's a big haul in the second, isn't it?
That's a huge 5 in the second, and to be all long range, so they're all at least 65 yards out.
Yeah.
It's absolutely huge, because you only have to look at, we'll say, Tony Kelly yesterday. You look at Conor Cooney, missed a couple there today. So to score them, I think Joe Canning said in a newspaper interview there recently enough that a free taker, you take him for granted. When he's putting the balls over, you say, sure, he's the free taker, he should be scoring them. What did he score from play? But when he misses them, everybody looks at the free taker. Why don't they switch the free taker? How did they have him on the frees? So a free taker, the skill of you have to take into fact, you have different pitches, you have different hurling balls, you might break a hurl, you have a different hurl. So there's so many different factors in it. A Croke Park wind, I never found there was much of a wind in Croke Park. You go to Thurles or Semple Stadium or Nolan Park or down to the Gaelic Grounds or Parkley Queeve, there's Salt Hill, the wind is, far different in each of them grounds. So you have so many things that are, variables and different on each given day. And Burns was brilliant on them frees in the second half.
And it's another feather in their cap, because it means that if you were of a mind to cynically foul an opposition or stop them coming out easy and maybe give away a few frees from way out, what you would think would be very deep, with Limerick you can't really do that, because Burns is actually liable to score from anywhere.
He is, yeah, anywhere, I'd say, from his own 45.
Yeah,
he'll put them over. Now he's shown as well that they have the mental capabilities as well to recover from that, because in the Munster final he missed a number of frees. But when you win or draw, when you win, they won that day. When you win, nobody takes notice, but when you lose, every, I suppose, little detail is looked into. But today they won by 3 and he scored 6, so that tells its own story.
I'm sure Sheahan is a consummate winner, and so anything but winning in All-Ireland he will class as a disappointment. But if we're to be a bit more forgiving, and you suspect he might be when he's thinking privately to himself, there are good ways to exit a championship and there are damaging ways to exit a championship. This is not a damaging loss to Galway and what he's trying to build there, I would put to you. They can take a lot from this.
Yeah, but there's no good way to... I understand what you're saying. A damaging way would be to go down with no spirit, no fight, maybe players finishing their careers. But there's no good way to exit a championship, Joe. Like, if I was a Galway man, I'd be saying we had a chance. This was our chance to beat Limerick, to, I suppose, stop their drive for 3 in a row, stop their probably drive for greatness, put a dent in their confidence, let them start questioning themselves in the last 5 minutes instead of, powering through with confidence and scoring them last minute scores. This was Galway's chance. Like, they haven't, they don't win All Irelands every day of the week, and sometimes it's about winning a game that you shouldn't have won. And today was probably that day for them.
Yeah, take the point. Maybe a better way of putting it. It furthers his credentials. It shows that Shefflin's made of the right stuff as a manager.
Yeah, it does, and he is, because he's brought... They can't create magical players, managers or coaches, but what they can do, they can, I suppose, introduce and maybe develop a culture, the right culture, that everyone comes in, they play with the same work rate, play with the same intensity consistently, and that's the key with Galway. I thought they've been consistent in their application of their work rate throughout the year, whether it's at league or championship. But probably the questions they'll have to ask themselves is, who is stepping up? You spoke about young players in Kilkenny yesterday, the age profile of the guys stepping up. Like, although TJ was, winning his aerial ball and was magnificent, it was the younger players, I suppose, were driving through. The Adrian Mullins, the Mikey Butlers, Hugh Lawlers. For Galway, it's still their main players, or their older players.
Right, okay. So that next generation hasn't nudged them out of the way and taken over just yet?
No, and they're not getting any younger.
No. Yeah, because for anyone just joining us, we were mentioning when it comes to Kilkenny, the likes of Adrian Mullen in the big game is 23, Owen Cody's only 21, Cian Kenny 21, Mikey Butler only 23. Galway want, a bit like Kilkenny now, they want 4 or 5 of that age profile taking the mantle.
Yes, and they've been in, I suppose, enough minor finals over the last couple of years that maybe there is guys that just need to be shown faith in. Say David Reedy, he was showing faith today coming on. Like, they brought him on in the second half. I'd say he was the first sub on before Casey, before Lynch, and he was the match winner. So sometimes you have to throw faith in a young fella, and it might take him a year, it might take him 6 months before he kind of gets in the groove and just becomes comfortable in the inter-county game, because it is faster, it is more physical, but as soon as you get acclimatised to it, it becomes the norm. So Galway possibly just have to start maybe giving these young guys more game time.
Pretend for a second you're Brian Cody. How does that feel?
Yeah, glad Henry Shefflin's not in the final. I don't have to.
I think we're all glad. I think we're all. It crossed my mind watching that second half. I'm taking the week off work. I'm not doing it. So, what will Cody take from the Galway performance, if you follow me? Because they caused Limerick numerous problems across that 70-plus minutes. So, what do you think will have struck Cody about the Galway efforts?
Yeah, well, I think the first of all, remember John Kiley came on in the 2018 All-Ireland semi-final. I was up here for the game against Cork when they came back and beat them to go through to the final, and he came out and he asked people to give the thanks for their support, but kind of politely said, please give these guys space now, as in, we are preparing for an All-Ireland final. I know Limerick at the time, they weren't in too many All-Ireland finals, so the celebration could be in the fact they reached it. But John Kiley was, no, we're going there to win it. And Brian Cody is going to be the same mindset. Like, he's going to be applauded after last night, what they've done to, we'll say, a Munster team, if you like, a team in the hottest of forms for most of the summer, and he's going to get huge, praise all this week. And it's his 17th or something All-Ireland final to play in, so many All-Ireland semi-finals he's after winning. And he has to remember, 2019 he was getting the same praise. 2016 when they beat Waterford in a classic blow in Thurles, him and his team were getting the same praise. And both times they came out and were beaten in the final. And they have to remember that feeling. Semi-finals, you don't get any cups, you don't get any medals. If they're to beat Limerick, they have to take them on man for man. And there's no other way about it. And Kilkenny have the players to do it. I've told you that, and I know you thought it was just because of where I was from, but no, I see these players day in, day out. They are, individually, there is excellence there is brilliance there, and they just have to. I definitely think if you're to take one thing out of today is, don't give Limerick too many sharp hook outs freely.
Right. Did Galway do that or no?
Different times they did, but listen, you'd have to say probably they changed it up, which I suppose is another thing. Don't be predictable against Limerick. So at times they were picking them up, more times they were just going back, probably after, I suppose, the early damage. They went with one probably tactic at the start of the game, but then in the first 5 minutes Gillan had 3 and Flanagan had 2 points got, so probably they had to change it around at that stage. And it looked like, trying to look at it live, they were kind of mixing and matching for most of the game, but they got it right. I'd have to say tactically they definitely got it right.
Yes.
So Kilkenny possibly the same. Like every game is different, so sometimes you might go with one or the other.
And sorry to make you repeat yourself here, but we were talking pre-game and I was asking you, given that Limerick are probably the most analysed team in the country now, had anybody developed certain tactical nuances to cause them trouble? And you were saying not especially, but you said you've seen what doesn't work, and certainly what doesn't work is to have an extra defender or two. A sweeper doesn't work against Limerick. Explain that to us again, Tommy. Why doesn't it work?
Yeah, so that doesn't work. Say, when I was hurling, if you got the ball out in the half back line, you just hit the ball in. So it was going in, and if you didn't, you'd be in trouble. From the sideline, the supporters wouldn't be happy with you, but the game has changed now. So if you have a sweeper in there against this Limerick team, and I get the ball now in the half back line, I will look up and I won't hit it in if the sweeper's in there. I will recycle the ball back. It's now okay to give it back to your goalie, give it back to your cornerback, go over to the far side of the field, hit it into a little gap around the middle. So now you don't just strike the ball in without looking. You only give it in if the forward is in front of your player. And I just think through the training and the consistency of application of hitting the ball short when you have to hit it by Connacht, they don't give out to them if they lose. They just go again and recycle on the next ball. From consistently doing that over the last 4 years, they're comfortable in their own skins playing the short game, and I just don't think they're probably the best team in the country, because when a normal team gets the ball, Joe, out around the middle, they can't break the tackles, but these guys have about 4, 5, 6 foot guys, 6'5". You have Will O'Donoghue, Kyle Hayes, Gerard Hegarty. Tom Morrissey is a little bit smaller, probably only 6'2", but he's huge as well, probably about 14 or 15 stone. So physically, you see, this game suits them. Give the ball to them short, they can break the tackles. You only look at the full back line who get a lot of ball. They usually give it to Barry Nash, who has legs, and just kudos to him as well. He scored one of the best points I'd say a cornerback has scored in Croke Park. Got the ball in the far side straight to midfield, but then boys can run with the ball.
So if you've got a sweeper, Limerick will just poke it around in front of you and take you out point by point by point from distance.
Yeah, so what you'll see is you won't see, so today Gillan got 6 from play, and you won't see them scoring. So Gillan, you'll say, Gillan had a quiet game, he might only score 1 or 2, and the same with Flanagan. But what you'll notice is Hegarty and Tom Morrissey were taken off today. They'd score 5 or 6 from play.
So they can get you either way.
Yeah, they can play, and that's, you ask me what's the strength of this Limerick team. They seem to be able to play it any way you want. And you know, the only thing you could say is there has been games where there's only a point or two in it, Joe, and like the minor final today, you might just get a stroke of luck and get a goal at the right time, and then they're shocked.
It seems like that's, regardless of who's playing Limerick, it seems like almost part of the case for the opposition against them is they might just get a bit of luck, or they might just get an extra goal or two here out of nothing. Limerick are so good at the moment, it feels like that's what's needed to beat them, really. There's no one who can almost take them, all things being equal.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. And you see, it comes from the confidence of winning as well. That, say, when there's 2 minutes to go, you're after winning so many titles at that stage, there's no fear of losing. If you lose, you lose, and you go on with it, and you come back and you win it again. But if it's your first time trying to win, and you're 2 pints up coming down the home stretch, or a pint up or a pint down, suddenly you're probably thinking to yourself, oh no, what if we lose this? Or, I need to get this next ball, I need to score it. It's just your confidence isn't as strong as this Limerick team. This Limerick team don't care.
Yeah. It's funny, you're talking there about Limerick over 4 or 5, however many years with Kiley and Kinnerk. They have allowed the team to get really good at playing the ball short, and they've tolerated the mistakes. It's kind of interesting as you look at Kilkenny now. They're probably a couple of years behind on that front, but they are increasingly going short, and they are making mistakes, and they're continuing to try and play it short. I think it was might have been Michael Dignan on commentary yesterday, but the ball broke down when Kilkenny had it middle of the field, and Dignan was saying Cody must hate it when it happens, because it goes against how he sees the game. Like, ultimately he's going along with it, but deep down he probably doesn't love it, and when it breaks down he really doesn't love it, but he's going with it anyway.
Yeah, no, because these are traditionalists, and we kind of, most hurling folk nearly are, and why Limerick don't mind is because with this new game, this is where they have entered this great team, and this is their experience of that system is great memories, great times. Limerick back in the big time. Brian Cody's experience of the long ball is great times, great memories. Many All-Ireland, 11 All-Irelands. So it is, if you win 11 All-Irelands, it's much more difficult to change your way of playing than if you have won none. And I think that's why Brian Cody probably, but now his experiences you see are after changing. You go to Salt Hill, when we played Galway, we were beaten with that last minute goal. They were going short, lost a few balls, as you said, probably weren't happy with, but for most of the second half they went long and were beaten. You go down to Nolan Park when they played Wexford this year, they went all long. Paddy Deegan and Rich Reid mostly long balls, and in the olden days it was a great ball. Them two boys were having the game of their lives, man of the match type performances, but they were beaten and suddenly they were being polarised for it. So I think through experience they have probably changed their ways, and I think that Wexford match in Nolan Park was the biggest one, because after that it was like, listen, we can't stay doing this.
And why do you think the long ball has stopped working?
Because there's never been as much analysis. I'll give you an example. The 2011 All-Ireland final, we played the semi-final, and I was hitting long balls into the full forward, and it mustn't have been working on your water. We were good that day, and it was just Richie Hogan came up to me between then and the final and just said, Tommy, every time you get the ball, my cornerback doesn't even mark me. He runs straight to the full back, to the square.
Right.
So that's the only reason I changed. It wasn't analysis, if you like, or watching videos. It was just Richie Hogan happened to have that. We were having dinner down Langton's one day after training. He just said it to me, just kind of off the cuff. So, sorry, going back to your question, but now everything is analysed. So probably everybody knows where Deemer Burns is going to hit the ball 9 times out of 10. Everybody probably knows,
God, that's interesting. And when Hogan said that, did you say, yeah, okay, fair enough, I'll start looking for one short to you then? Or did you say, well, sod it, you run after him and win the ball?
Well, no. Well, the funny story behind that is in the All-Ireland final then, I hit a great ball across to Henry Shefflin, and Henry Shefflin put it over the bar. And ever since then, everyone said, you always had a telepathic understanding the two of you. You always knew where Shefflin was, and he always knew where to run. And in my head, was, no, Richie Hogan told me, stop hitting that ball to the square. So I said I'd hit it to the other side.
Interesting, yeah.
I think yesterday, as a collective game of our collective games, proved what we already knew, but proved it very clearly yesterday, which is when the Northern Hemisphere teams travel south in July, or the Southern Hemispheres travel north in November, it's the end of the respective seasons, and at that point the players are cooked. They're done on both sides, so they're emotionally done. They're physically done, and they have nothing more to offer. So it's stacked against the travelling side. Does that mean it can't be achieved? No, it doesn't. But it really does show that there is no, that there's no room for error. And I think that has a huge part of what happened yesterday. I also think, we forget as journalists and as broadcasters and as fans, the fans forget as well, the physical effort that goes into rugby in particular, and also the miles on the clock when you've done that 7, 8, 9, 10 seasons at the top. And And I don't think it's any surprise that Dan Sheahan was arguably Ireland's strongest forward yesterday for 80 minutes. He's the youngest, and he's got the least miles on the clock. And he was still going great guns at the end of that game yesterday. So in the end, maybe it shouldn't be a big surprise. Like, you go to the home of arguably consistently the best team in the world over the last 20 years, and you're not on your A game, and you get opened. And so be it. It is what it is. And really what it also proves to me is the World Cup is really the only leveller, because everybody arrives into that in the same sort of condition.
I think that there has been a sea change in how we want our props to play. Yes, we have a freak called Cian Healy who could scrummage, he could line out lift, he could counter up, he could catch, he was, for 10, 15 years he's been phenomenal. Tyke Furlan is of that ilk. But the likes of Mike Ross, the value of a Mike Ross is just enormous. Like, Mike Ross wasn't the most comfortable rugby footballer, but his value was immense. And I think there has been, whether it's just the general public who've tired of the value of scrums, or is the IRFU in a sense, but I think we need set piece players first. And if they can play rugby beyond that, that's an added bonus.
Right.
We've been probably looking to the swashbuckling front row players before getting the scrummaging bit right. Like someone like John Ryan in Munster, super rugby player and a super prop. Never really got the huge value that I think he deserved. There's an example of a guy who does a really good job at set piece time, but isn't a Tyke Furlong, isn't a Cian Healy, and probably doesn't get the merits what he does. And O'Toole coming on Saturday, like, that's amazing to think, like, he's definitely in his development phase, but to see him, like, how many tight-head props get to play the All Blacks in Eden Park, like, it's outrageous. He's in a very select group. So the lessons being learned are huge as well. Going into what you were referring to about what Bernard Jackman was talking about, that's an institutional thing, and I think I would agree with you. I think the general rugby public has been blinded by the great St. Michael's School churning out back rows and second rows. We have to be very hungry about how we rebuild our front row options, and we seem very, very threadbare. Very, very threadbare.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating.